to agree to it. Got it. Right. So first of all, welcome everyone to the 7th Eicefala. I must admit this time I haven't been deeply involved in the organization, but I think it has been running well by Maria, Henny, Magnum, and Leo. And for those of you who have not been to previous Eicefala, the first Eicefala we had, the idea was to have a winter school that would combine linguistics and technology, speech technology. And so it was called Escola de Inverno. The EI was the Escola de Inverno CEFALA, which is the Centro de Estudos da Fala, Acústica e Música, coordinated by Henny's lab. So unfortunately, to get funding, you can't have a school. You have to have a meeting. So we changed the name to Encontro Internacional de Ciências da Fala. And that was why it has its name. And we tried in previous editions to keep the courses, and we've had great courses before. And this time we're going to have a course by Didier, a course by Adriano, and João Vitor, and another one by?
No, there are only 2 mini courses.
2, yeah, it's Didier and Adriano. So the idea is in these courses to have more interaction than you usually have in a talk, and you can even ask silly questions, because no question is silly, but questions that you don't, because we are not, like, we linguists are not from speech technology, and sometimes things that are said we don't really understand quite as what it's meant to mean. So feel free to ask any questions at any time. And yeah, it's within this spirit that also Eicefala got a very strong bias towards L2 and like teaching and learning and processing, etc. So it's very good to see everyone who's also interested in L2. And yeah, I think that's what I had to say. And for those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Thais Christopher Silva. I was a lecturer, full-time lecturer, professor at UFMG until 2019 when I retired, but I'm still active there in the postgraduate program. And I'm still doing research, and that's why I'm here. I'm a retired woman who works full-time. And I don't know how I go around to that, but that's what I am. So that's me, and I pass the word to Henny now.
So good afternoon to everybody, or good evening to people in Europe. It's a pleasure to be here in this virtual meeting. It's the first time we have a virtual Eicefala. I told Thais that on one hand, this is a problem because a physical meeting has a lot of advantages, but at the same time, it's something good because it allows the presence of people from all over the country or all over the world without many problems. This first session is will finish at 2 o'clock, and the idea I had was to have everybody doing a quick introduction of so that we know who are present, who is present in this meeting. And then I will ask this. I will not spend much time. First, about the first Eicefala, the interesting thing was that by coincidence, at some point in 2003, I think 2003 or 2005, we had a lot of guests at UFMG at the same time. Then I say we should use this time to have a meeting. Then we could have a very interesting meeting in 2005. I will follow the sequence that I have here and ask each of you to introduce himself or herself. And I'll start with Leonardo Araújo. Leonardo Araújo is the guy who made this meeting possible, because he's our expert in all kinds. We have of things about proceedings and also sites and things like that. So thank you, Leonardo. Thank you in advance.
And he's great artist. He's the one who does the artwork for Eicefala, and has always done.
When he does a logo, usually the logo is used forever. Nobody changes it. Nobody can do that. Leonardo, so please.
Forever, you said?
Yes, for example, ISSP use your logo since 2006, and we are 15 years later. They didn't change the logo.
So that's me. You already have made the introduction for me. So I'm here as the host also of the meeting for now. If the meeting don't.
And you are you teach at Federal University of Ouro.
University of São João del Rei, the campus in Ouro Branco. Yeah. So I work with quantitative linguistics and signal processing. That is the main field I work in nowadays. And what else?
No, that's it. One important thing, we usually we hold this meeting in English, so that it's an opportunity to everybody to practice, and also it allows the presence of people who do not speak Portuguese, though most of us speak. So next is Cecilia. Cecilia Toledo, are you there? Cecilia Toledo, are you there? Can you introduce yourself? So be prepared. I will call you again in a few minutes. Adelaide, can you introduce yourself, please?
Okay, then. Good afternoon. I am Adelaide Silva from Federal University of Paraná. My main interests are phonetics and phonology, and the conjugation, the commensurability of the two areas. And I work mainly with acoustic phonetics. So I think that's all. I don't.
Don't worry. To be quick, so that people know you. And where are you?
Curitiba.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
With my secretary.
Okay. Cecilia, are you there? Not yet. So next in my list here is Itana. Itana Nascimento. Itana, are you there? You should open your microphone. So I'll go next. I'll come back to Itana again. Eleonora. Eleonora. Okay. I think everybody knows Eleonora, but I will ask her to introduce herself.
Thank you very much, Henny. Not true. I'm too old to be known by the young. You know, I'm Eleonora Albano. I'm about to retire from Unicamp. And my area is phonetics, phonology, psycholinguistics, and I prefer to say that I have no area. I mean, I do work that's fundamentally interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary, depending on the partners. Well, I'm gonna retire because I'm also an activist. And I think I'm much more needed as an activist nowadays than as an academic. So I need to have more time for struggling for a better future that I may not see, but I want every young person that I have somehow contributed to educate, to have access to this better future, which is now very inaccessible. We are suffering attacks from all over the place. Academia is in great danger. So that's one of the reasons. Not really age, because they have changed the age for retirement. So I could stay another few years, 4 years at most. But I'm going to retire by the beginning of next year. I never quit doing this because I do this for love. I love being perhaps the first. I don't know whether this is accurate, but the first or to have taken this with Didier, the first laboratory phonologists in Brazil, and I'm very proud of that. And my students, I guess, are too, because they have adopted this point of view. So much for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleonora. Next, Cecilia, are you there? Yes.
Yeah, now I'm here, sorry. So, hi everyone, I'm Cecilia. I am Thais student and I study my PhD in UFMG. And my work is about the relationship between speech and writing. I think it's...
Good, thank you very much. Next in my list is Emerson.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Emerson. I am a master's student at UFMG. And I was I took a class with Professor Henny last semester. I think that's it. I'm interested in speaking research. That's why I'm here. Professor introduced the 7th Eicefala that was going to be held this holiday, so I came to take a look.
Mm-hmm. So Emerson, you are the student who did the vocoder?
No, Henrique did the vocoder. I did the non-parametric filtering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So next in my list is Felipe, or Felipe has already introduced himself. Felipe Kupski.
Hi everyone. First of all, sorry for my raspy voice today. I spent the whole day traveling yesterday, so I was quite tired, right? So I'm Felipe Kupski. I'm a full professor of English linguistics at UFMG, Universidade da Baia, and I currently lecture phonetics and phonology and second language acquisition. What else? Well, I work with language development and language attrition. I'm also interested in the interaction between speech perception and production, so I draw from ideas from sociophonetics in laboratory phonology. This is why I belong to DINAPHON as well. And my current research aims to investigate language attrition with a focus on how bilinguals change their abilities to perceive and produce first language in L2 dominant contexts. That is, I work with first language, changes in the first language that are triggered by second language acquisition. I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Itana, are you there? So I'll call Itana once again next time. Laura, let me check your family name, Sherekchevsky. Laura, are you there? I'll try again later. Lais Bocorni. Not yet. Leonardo Teixeira.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leonardo Teixeira. I am a graduate student at Universidade Federal do Ceará under the supervision of Ronaldo Mandeira Lima Jr. And my research interests are about the development of rhythm, prosody, specifically rhythm, in L2 learners, Brazilian speakers. And yes, I perform acoustics analysis, and I'm interested in phonetics and phonology in general. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Nice to have you here. Laura, are you there? So let's try Lais. Lais Bocorni.
Teacher Betty.
Okay, no, so let me follow.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi, I think it's right now.
And much better. I can hear you.
My name is Lais. I study psycholinguistics focusing on phonology development with Professor Fátima here at WESB.
Where?
WESB, Universidade Estadual do Sudoeste da Bahia.
Aha, nice. So be welcome. And let me try now Magnum.
Hi, hello. Nice to meet all of you. My name is Magnum, and I'm an assistant professor at UFMG. I teach phonetics and phonology, and this is my first Eicefala actually, so I'm so excited to hear from you and know your work, everybody's work. So thank you for inviting me to be part of the committee. And I'm so happy to see many friends here as well. That's good. I'm so happy. Thank you.
And Magno is one of the
organizers.
He's one of the organizers of the meeting. So thanks to him and Maria Cantoni that I'm going to call now, we have this meeting today. Maria, it's your turn.
Hi everybody. And I'm Maria Cantoni. I'm a professor at UFMG too, like Magnum, and I teach courses in phonetics and phonology. And I'm happy to see you all here today.
Mm-hmm. And also Maria Cantoni recently graduated in electrical engineering, for those who don't know. She was my student.
She was my student too, darling, and she was Rafael's student too.
But I was the supervisor of her TCC, the graduate project. I don't know how to say in English.
Just teasing you.
I know it. So next here, Maria de Fátima Baia.
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 Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. I'm not ready yet to open my camera, so I'm not going to open now. But for my talk, I'll be showing my face. Well, I'm a professor at UESB in Bahia, state in Brazil. I teach courses on psycholinguistics, language acquisition, and I'm very happy to be here again with you.
So be welcome. And next in my list here is Mateus Freitas. Mateus, have you already spoken? No, not yet. Mateus Freitas?
I'm here. Hi, everyone. Sorry for not speaking earlier. I was having lunch and it was a chaotic situation. I'm going to show my face later on. I'm still getting myself ready here, but I'm Mateus. I'm very happy to be here for another Eicefala edition. I'm a PhD candidate at the Federal University of Minas Gerais. I study phonology and phonetics. I'm supervised by Professor Thais Cristoforo. I'm going to talk about my work on Wednesday, so I'm going to enter in detail then. But that's it. I'm very glad to be here seeing all of you again.
So you're welcome, Mateus. I will try again. Laura, are you there? Laura Sherechevsky? No, not yet, but hello?
Hi, I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura. I finished my master's studies earlier this year at URGS with Professor Bira. I studied phonetics and phonology. I studied language development and language attrition. And I guess that's it. I'll present my work on Friday.
What's the university? I didn't...
URGS.
URGS, so Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul.
Yes.
Good. So be welcome too. And please, could you say your family name again?
It's Shereshevsky.
I saw I spoke it well.
Yeah, you said it pretty well.
Good. So next in my list is Melchior.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Melchior. I am an electrical engineer. I've just received my degree at UFMG. I'm also an associated researcher at CEFALA under the supervision of Henrietta. I will present my work on Thursday, our work on Thursday, about supersonic attacks and virtual assistants. And that's it. I'm also a musician. I specialize in my studies in audio, all related audio, especially digital signal processing. And I work as a software engineer as well. So That's it. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, especially the organization committee that has been this meeting possible this week. So thank you for all your efforts and thank you.
So I invited Melchior to this meeting because in his graduate work, he developed a technique to generate and record ultrasound, near ultrasound. And I talked to some people here about the possibility to somehow study how we can, even if you cannot hear, if we can or cannot perceive ultrasound. So that's an idea that I had and made Melchior present in this meeting so that we can discuss about it. Next is Raphael Labossière. Good evening.
Sure, good evening here. So I'm Raphael Labossière and I work as a researcher in the National Center for Scientific Research in France. So it's the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique for those who have L3 French, so you can understand. So I'm allocated at the University of Grenoble in France at the Laboratory of Psychology and Neurocognition. And I started my research career doing research in speech, so in relationship between speech production, speech perception. And then I quickly went to the domain of neurophysiological models of speech production. And then I made several things and I studied model control in other areas as well. And more recently, I have been interested in multisensory integration in human behavior. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I think I'm the only French in the group.
Possibly, at least for this moment.
The only foreigner, maybe.
Didier will be around at some point. And next, thank you, Rafael. Next in my list is Ronaldo Lima Jr.
Hello, everyone. I got in a little late, but I guess we're introducing ourselves. So I'm Ronaldo. I'm a professor at the Federal University of Ceará, here in the background. And Eicefala is for sure one of my favorite events. And I was really glad that this year it could be held online and with this easy access to everyone. So I'm glad to have one of my master's students, Leonardo, who is going to present this afternoon. He's finishing his work this month. And another one on Wednesday, Alejandro, who finished his master's here with me, and now is taking his doctorate with Eleonora at Unicamp. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm sure this week is going to be very fruitful. So and it's great to see so many familiar faces that I miss so much. So hello, everyone.
So some people are sending messages in the chat. And I think Maria de Fátima said that the building behind you is a very beautiful building.
Yes, it's the Reitoria of the Federal University.
When was it built?
Yes.
When was it built? Do you know?
It has this colonial architecture, but I wouldn't know exactly when, but it has this Portuguese colonial architecture thing.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So Thais has already spoken. Ubiratan, nice to have you with us.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be with you and to see so many familiar faces. I'm really glad to be here, although we have to face this, pandemic thing and be away from each other. I've been attending Eicefalas for a long time. I recall that I think my first edition was the third one. I don't know. I recall that the second time I attended Eicefala, we had John Bybee, and that was in 2010. So I think my first edition was in 2007 or something like that. Maybe Thais and
what's the second?
Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay. So I've been attending for a long time. I was still a PhD student, and I never missed any of them, and I hope I will never miss it because, as Ronaldo has just said, it's one of our favorite conventions in the field. I work with second language development, phonetics, and phonology at Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul. And well, as for my presentations, I'm having a presentation on Thursday, and Laura is having a presentation on Friday as well. So we can show you a little bit of the work that we have been carrying out. So thank you once again. That's a very nice opportunity to be here. And I hope that next one will not be online, that we are gonna be at UFMG once again, hopefully.
Yeah, maybe we can try a hybrid way to do it.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Also,
as well.
for example, sometimes it's hard for people to travel, though we welcome everybody. But and I'm seeing some meetings that are being held this year, and they are doing a hybrid form, so that we have both ways to participate.
Yeah, the only problem with online meetings is, for example, tomorrow I can't be with you guys because I will be teaching. Because when we travel, okay, we are, you know, fully devoted to the convention. But when we are at home, there is always the phone ring or something at university that prevents you from, you know, fully concentrating on what you've got to do. So I think the idea of having a hybrid thing is a nice thing, because, you know, then those who are really far can really take part in it, but those who are not that far can go and, you know, really concentrate on the thing.
Yeah, you are right. Yeah, and by the way, the idea of having this meeting all over the week from 1 to 4:30 was an idea that I had. Okay, maybe it's easier for people to take 3 or 4 hours of the day during a few days than to take the entire days for 2 or 3 days. I don't know. Anyway, when you can, please be with us. Next in my list is Elizabeth.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
I can see you.
Okay, great. So my name's Elizabeth. I go by Betty. I'm from the United States, so there's another foreigner here. I think Rafael said he's a foreigner as well. But I am currently in a master's program here at UFSC in Florianópolis. So I'm in the Programa de Pós-Graduação de Inglês. And my focus for studies is perception training, specifically working with vowel sounds in English and Brazilian learners. So I will be presenting my research on Friday.
So thank you. One question, where are you in US?
I'm from Seattle, Washington, but I'm currently living in Florianópolis here in Brazil.
Good. So be welcome.
Thank you.
So did I miss anybody? Or did I talk to everybody?
Did. Victor Medina, I think haven't talked. Emerson.
Victor Medina, sorry for forgetting you.
I think it was just Victor, actually.
So.
Adriano hasn't.
Adriano Vilela entered too. Yes, right. So Victor, you please introduce yourself. Victor, open your microphone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Victor. I have been attending the Eicefala for a couple of occasions. I think I missed only 2 or 3 times in the past few years. I also remember when Greta mentioned that when John Baidi came here was my first contact with her, so it was quite an event for me, as I had read her work when I was Thais' student. I haven't been involved in academia for a while since I finished my master's degree, but I'm trying to make a comeback. So I've been attending events more often, and I'm also working with, well, let's say, concerning my research interests. They are all focused on second language production, speech production, especially for English learners. And I work as an academic coordinator at the Language Institute, and I have been teaching courses on that. So I'm trying to connect both research and teaching practice as much as I can. So it's good to see you all here.
And last but not least, Adriano Vilela, are you there?
I am.
So be welcome.
Thank you. Well, I was late for this, right? I thought this was supposed to start at 1:30 or something, so sorry about that. My name is Adriano Vilela. I'm a professor at the Department of Electronics Engineering, actually, at UFMG. And my background is mainly on audiovisual signal processing, right? Or signal processing, audiovisual speech signals, right? I've been working with this for the past, maybe 15 years, right? And my focus is mainly on developing, like at least over the past few years, developing tools and techniques for quantifying coordination during communicative performance, right? So I'm a colleague of Hennis at the electronics department, right? And I also collaborate with Thais, Maria Canton, right? So I'm also a member of the CEFALA lab at UFMG. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
So good. If I missed anybody, please let me know now. So, okay. So it's now 1:35 p.m. Eleonora will start talking at 2 sharp, and we have 25 minutes. I will use this time first to explain about the proceedings. At this moment, we have an abstract of all of the works to be presented, including the mini courses and the plenary talks. But we intend to have proceedings with the full papers of all of the works presented. The idea of not asking for the paper before the meeting is that we expect nice discussions during the talks, so that after the discussions, people will have maybe a possibility to make a more solid paper. And Leonardo Araújo, that is here, he will make available templates in LaTeX format and Word, Microsoft Word format as well. Not Microsoft Word, the open document format. It's basically the same thing.
No, Gareth, it's better not use templates. If you want to send it in LaTeX, just use the full article template in LaTeX, and then I will fit in our template. And if you're gonna send it in Word or LibreOffice, then you just write your text. I thought it was better just to limit the number of words instead of number of pages that would change with the template.
At most 4,000 words, that's it?
That's it.
4,000 words. So it's good for you. You only have to write the paper. If you have to choose between LaTeX or open document, LaTeX is preferable, Leonardo?
Yes.
Okay. If you can do it in LaTeX, otherwise it's okay to make in open document or LibreOffice format. If you have any question, you can ask us, and we are going to give you further explanation. Please avoid very large tables. That each table should fit in one page, on one page, and figures should be my suggestion: make it in a vectorizable format. Like what's a good format, Leonardo, for figures?
Could be PDF or EPS.
EPS, PDF, or if it's an image, make it with the resolution larger or equal to 300 dots per inch. And I would suggest to send it in PNG, portable network graphics, unless it's a photograph. In that case, if it's a photograph, send it in JPEG. But if you have any questions about the format to send, please let us know, and we are going to answer quickly or promptly. That's one important thing. I would ask from those who are here, who intend to send us a full paper? So, Felipe? You don't know? Emerson? So, we can discuss about that later. So, it's okay. And anyway, so it's it. So, what else is important to say now before? So, should we analyze the program? So, you know that all the days, we are going to have a mini course at 1 o'clock and a plenary talk at 2 o'clock. So today we have Eleonora. Maybe I should share my screen with you. Let me do it.
Henny, maybe after you do that, we have a break for 10 minutes to get ourselves.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then I'll get some water and then we'll come back.
I'll take 5 minutes here just to.
Okay.
So as you can see, can you see my screen? Let me make it larger. Okay, you can see it now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the opening session. Eleonora is going to talk from 2 to 3 p.m. The work is with Antônio Pessotti, who is a good friend too, and Carla Diaz. And then that's today. Tomorrow, we have Rafael doing a plenary talk at 1 o'clock, and then a mini course at 2 o'clock from João Vitor and Adriano and I. Then on Wednesday, we have Silk Haman and Chao Zhu at 1 o'clock, and Didier Demoulin with the second mini course at 2 o'clock. Then Ubiratan is going to talk on Thursday with Laura Sharevsky, and that will be at 1 o'clock. And João Vitor de Menezes in me, so the second day of our mini course. And finally, on 17th, at 1 o'clock, that's a little bit different. Didier is going to teach the second day of his mini course. And then during all these days, we are going to have oral presentations. I should explain here that some people would prefer to have a poster presentation, but as we had time to have oral presentations for all the accepted works, and we decided to make it. So don't worry. It will be easy. We are among friends, so there will be no problems with oral presentations. Each presentation should last for 15 minutes. Then we will have 5 minutes for a discussion and the transition to the next talk. We are going to have 4 presentations on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And on Friday, we are going to have 5 oral presentations. And I think is it okay here on Thursday? We have 2 sessions. Okay, on Friday we are going to have 3 presentations between 2 and 3 p.m. A small break, and the other 2 presentations at 3:15, and then a closing session where we're going to talk what happened in the meeting and so on. Since we don't have a physical meeting, we don't have a coffee break, but we expect all of you to have your own coffee or your own chimarrão or anything like that for the breaks. And now, where is my Zoom here? Where is it? Okay, let me go here. And Thais, I think it's now 1:42. We can make a 15 minutes break now, and be back to this meeting a little bit before 2 o'clock, maybe 5
to 2.
5 to 2, so that we have time to start at 2 sharp.
That's it. Okay? See you in a bit, guys.
So, okay, so we have, you can close your cameras and microphones now and be back in 15 minutes. Okay, so see you soon. Thais, anything to speak? No, so we'll be back in 15 minutes.
She's gone already.
Okay, good. So I see you soon.
Léo, eu não estou achando onde que é o share sound aqui.
Então, eu também não sei, deve ser da janela, porque aqui parece só já a tela a parte de dentro, né, da janela. Na borda da janela, para você não aparece nada além do que tá aí, não?
Nada, não. Tem tudo, comentário,
mas na borda, abaixo disso aí que você está mostrando.
Ah, já sei aonde que vai estar, peraí.
Ou talvez no Zoom mesmo.
Oi.
Eu acho que é na hora que você compartilha sua tela, você tem a opção de compartilhar seu áudio.
Tá, então peraí. Deixa eu ir lá. Aí, chat, basic, advantage, advanced. Deixa eu ver.
There is an icon on below this.
Share sound.
Yeah.
Got you. E optimize for video clip, não, né?
Only if you want high resolution sound. It might be interesting, but you use more internet band.
Vamos ver se vai, só para eu ver como que é.
It's a pleasure to be here to present this paper and example model.
Deu certo.
Talvez eu até faça isso, em vez é menos estresse de apresentar na hora. Esse que eu gravei...
Pois é, eu acho bom.
Esse que eu gravei, ele não é... ele tem uns errinhos, assim, que eu gostaria de melhorar, mas pelo menos já está feito, né?
Uhum.
Aí, porque eu consegui colocar em 16 minutos, assim, mas assim, depois eu até edito ele, que eu tenho um pedacinho que eu quero cortar, mas eu não vou cortar aqui agora, não.
É hoje, né?
É hoje, é 20 minutos, né? 15 para apresentação e 5 para discussão, né?
Eu já não lembro, acho que era.
Acho que é também.
1, 2, 3.
Quem foi o Bira que deu o toque aí, né, Bira? Obrigada.
É isso mesmo, Thaís. É 15 mais 2, 15 mais 5. Esses 5 devem ser suficientes para discussão e transição.
Eu consegui colocar em 16 minutos, mas se eu tivesse como editar aqui, porque eu não vou fazer
mas
edição
16,
no meio do
16 está ok. Você come a discussão, não tem problema.
Isso. Tá bom. O Tchau entrou, né? O Tchau Zu entrou aí, depois ele se apresenta, né? Ei, Érico, ele chama Érico em português. E ele tem... ele mora em Portugal. Ele é o nosso convidado, junto com a Silke Hamann.
Olá, professora, boa tarde.
Boa tarde, tudo bem, Érico?
Tudo, obrigado. A professora não deve estar em Portugal nesse momento?
Não. Onde que está o meu vídeo? Start video, deixa eu aparecer para você.
Where are you from in China?
Yeah, I'm from China.
So where in China?
Jiangsu in the southeast. A city close to Shanghai.
Shanghai, yeah, Shanghai. Nice. So be welcome.
Thank you.
And
when did you go to Portugal?
Like 6 years ago.
So, and how do you like it? Nice?
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah.
Good.
Quem não gosta de comer pastel de nata? Não, eu tô falando, quem não gosta de comer pastéis de nata, né? E passear pelas ruas bonitinhas de Lisboa, muito bom. Então, eu vou buscar minha água, que minha garrafa está vazia, e já volto. Vou tirar o meu som aqui, a imagem.
Até logo.
Tchau.
Vocês estavam falando português, eu ouvi um português aí, isso é?
Yeah, it's a Chinese speaking Portuguese living in Portugal.
Oh, seems good. You know, it doesn't sound like Chinese, but at least from a distance.
His pronunciation is very, very good.
Yeah, I think so. I didn't hear much. I had to talk to someone. That's why I was wearing a mask. When are we going to be free of this pandemic? We don't know. WHO says it's going to be difficult because of the Delta variant. Have you heard of this? I can't hear.
Okay, so are you there? We are going to start in a few minutes. Let me see. How is your poster? Okay, Eleonora. Would you like to share your screen so that we can see the first slide?
Okay. It's please advise me. Should I use PDF or PowerPoint? I don't like PowerPoint. Sometimes it's, but that's what I use for the original. And then I write a PDF. Let's try to start with PowerPoint.
First of all, share. Okay, that's it. That's okay. That's perfect. Now make it full screen.
Full
screen. Down there, down to your right bottom. That's it.
Okay.
Click there.
All right. I hope so. I'm not so sure it will work because sometimes PowerPoint has problems with images.
Do not worry. Do not worry. How is Antônio?
Antônio is probably going to get into some part of this meeting. I don't know whether he will be able to come today because he teaches music classes, classical singing, and sometimes he has students, of course, over the internet, virtual students, but he manages. He's doing all right. He never leaves our lab, so he's always there. I always find some position for him, some sort of fellowship or. Now we are working on a project on voice quality to submit to FAPESP so that the scholarship will be more rewarding because of these scholarships are very ridiculous, I should say.
One thing, is he singing sometimes? You don't know.
He's a tenor and an opera singer, but now it's all online.
He wasn't the first Eicefala, and I remember at some point Mauricio Loureiro was giving a talk, and then he showed some scores of ancient chant or some Byzantine chant or something like that, and then Mauricio said, "Nobody today can follow these scores." Then Antônio said, "No, I can." Then Mauricio, can you? And then he sang.
He did, and he does. He has a group that works on that. So they have a choral of ancient music. I don't know whether this is at work now because they would make presentations in Italy sometimes. People in Italy didn't know how to pronounce certain things or how to interpret the musical score, but his group figured it out, especially because Piracicaba, his town, he doesn't live in Campinas, has Italian immigrants and several immigrants from different different places of Italy, and then some of them speak a dialect that is no longer spoken in Italy. You know, the descendants, they speak sort of an antique dialect of Italian. There are funny stories about those towns in São Paulo. Inland, small towns in inland state of São Paulo.
Mm-hmm.
Is everyone back?
Okay. Yes. So people are.
I am.
Are people there?
I am back.
Are people back?
I am.
Yes.
I'll put my mic in mute.
Hello, what did I do? What are you
Hi,
doing?
Eleonora. How are you? So we have a special guest today. He's my secretary.
Wow. And the dogs, where are they?
Out there at the garden.
Oh, I see. Now you live in a house.
In a house, and
Last
we have cats and
time,
dogs.
I visited you. You had a dog, but in an apartment.
Yeah. Princesa is now 17.
17. That's the age when Kinkas passed away.
Oh.
So he was 17. No, that was long ago.
Yeah, yeah. I remember Kinkas. I remember.
He's 21 now. Can I start?
So we have now 29 people here. We have 20 seconds before 2 o'clock. Eleonora,
I will questions for Eleonora. Eleonora, do you intend to continue like doing phonetics research after retirement, or because I've seen that you start to do more like a politician discussions, more discussions on politics and related to linguistics. What do you intend to continue to do?
Who's asking?
Magnum.
Magnum.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, I've always been an activist, but activists are necessary more than ever now.
Yeah.
I spend more time on that, but do linguistics. It's under my skin.
Yeah, but I mean, like you use it to do really nice research on phonetics, and you contributed a lot to our field. And that's my question, because I haven't seen like you doing phonetic acoustics anymore, just more like this activist and speeches.
Oh,
this is very
some of my other papers, I know. You know, it's on.
I know, of course, I read your book, and it's
Magno. Eleonora is going to write her last paper at the age of 102 years old. So do not worry about that.
It's lovely to hear you, Eleonora. I really appreciate you. You know, thank you.
So
thank you for asking. I'll consider that, but for the time being,
anyway,
I have to save the university. And I have to help other people who are working actively on this, and give more time to them. So I'll be back. Okay, can I start?
It's 2 o'clock now, and Thais, should I introduce Eleonora? Okay, so it's an honor to have Eleonora Albano opening this meeting with her talk, some questions on L2 speech as related to colonialism, and I will give Eleonora about 50 minutes to speak. You can speak more or less than that, Eleonora, it's your choice. And after that, we'll have time for a small discussion before the next session. So Eleonora, the audience is yours.
Thank you very much, Henny. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm very pleased and honored to be at UFMG anyway, virtually. I don't know which cardinal ordinal number of Eicefala this is, but I've been to many. I don't remember exactly. Let's hope that next time we can all hug and kiss, okay? Let's keep our fingers crossed. Well, this is a rather vague title because we still have to work on our questions, and I don't think we'll have anything ready for publication in your deadline. But I appreciate the offer. We will consider. We are a team of 3. Antônio Pessotti, who always hangs around, but is in Piracicaba, and he was once my doctoral student, and Carla Diaz, who is now my doctoral student, and then she's a Brazilian Peruvian citizen. She has double nationality. This is going to be important. Okay, so let's situate colonialism. It's not really about colonialism, but about coloniality of power, which is a different concept that was introduced by the great Peruvian sociologist Aníbal Quijano, who fled Peru in the Fujimori era. Okay. And he came up with this, let me minimize this definition of coloniality of power that's still more economic in a follower wrote it. It refers to how colonial patterns of power and inequality transcend the spatial and temporal boundaries of empire and colony. But the important things about coloniality of power is that there's a different epistemology proposed, and this is that the colonial practices of Eurocentric world or Eurocentric countries, that is Europe, Western Europe, and United States, Canada, they all these practices all originated in Latin America and have spread globally. Went to Asia, for example, as our resources were about to exhaust. So the colonial practices migrated. And he holds that Western wealth is based on the spoliation of African slaves and indigenous people. Indigenous people do not lend themselves to slavery, but they all pay workers, domestic workers sometimes, and this is serfdom. And they are spoliated, exploited by the elite that serves the colonial powers. That's his thesis. And I realized that this is when I read Quijano, it's a couple of years ago only, I realized that it's very important to look from this new epistemological perspective to understand something that I'm kind of crazy about: phonetic drift. Phonetic parameters drifting back and forth according to various conditions. So in order to understand phonetic drift in the colonized, we need a non-Eurocentric perspective, and this is why I chose Quijano. All the studies reported here have Peruvian participants, and we have a Peruvian among the authors. Well, the first is just something kind of old, 2008, and a very simple study I'm a co-author, but Diego Ramirez is the first author. We published it in 2013, and it's about the acquisition of road-text in general, but we focus here just on the coda to give the more cogent example. These are Peruvian students that had different times of residence in Campinas. And we are talking about the coda road-text. At 4 months, it was the coronal one, the TAP. At 16 months, the guy was, yeah, three students, case study, who had been there for 16 months, was almost 60% exteriorizing his Rolex. And the guy who was there, they were all males, who had been there for a longer time, over 2 years, had almost posteriorized everything. So carnal, just a little bit, and the rest is velar or blot. And this is amazing because Campinas has this access port. What they are acquiring are prestige varieties, like my porta. Okay, so velar and lot of varieties that show up, for instance, in the media, on TV, etc. That's just an example of how political choices, people sometimes have no choice. And I guess in 2008, Peru was too unstable and Brazil was going through a nice phase. So this is a very simple example of how people migrate in Latin America, seeking better study or work condition, and how they shift around or drift the phonetic parameters to learn an L2. These were speakers of Spanish, of course. But then we decided that we wanted something more Peruvian, and that could be Quechua or Amara. But we chose Quechua because Carla was had some contacts, and we decided that we were going to study Quechua speakers living in Brazil, of course, and compare their Quechua with the Spanish. And we didn't talk about recording Portuguese as well, because this design was already too complicated. As we chose Quechua, we thought one of the most interesting features of Quechua is the stop inventory. And Quechua has a three-way distinction. It's plain voiceless, aspirate or aspirated, and the adjective, which is kind of a mark of the languages in the Andes, Peru and Bolivia. And of course, we all know that Spanish is very much like Portuguese, voiceless and voiced. Quechua has no voice and stops. In the places of articulation, there are more in Quechua, but we made them parallel, label of Euler and Villa, compare with Spanish. And of course, we wanted monolingual and bilingual, but there was no monolingual Quechua in Brazil for obvious reasons. So we ended up with this study with a missing branch here and available. Okay, and only 5 participants. Go back. Let me go. Because we didn't find them. There were 2 in Campinas, and then we had to record the other 3 in São Paulo. The literature said that for Bolivian Quechua, these acoustic phonetic parameters were good. So VOT, burst amplitude, H1 minus H2, first harmonic minus second harmonic, and F0. So we set out to do that, study Quechua in this way. This is just our list of words for both languages, the words that they recorded. And let's, for those who are not linguists, let's recapitulate the steps in the production of an ejective by our great Peter Ladeford. Well, the back of the tongue, if you have a velar ejective, the back of the tongue goes up at the same time as the glottis closes. Okay, so but the third thing that happens is no, the second thing that happens is the glottis is raised, and then there's a lot of compressed air in the pharynx as a consequence. If you release the oral closure, then it takes some time, and finally you release the glottal closure. So these numbers correspond to the 5 steps in the production of an ejective. Okay, we got some really weird, crazy ejectives. This was the canonical one, okay, and the oral burst. It's okay. I'm not good at pronouncing ejective. Stella is, but she's not here. Then there is a silent interval.
Como se eu fosse entender alguma coisa, né?
A question. Is anyone asking something? Can I go ahead a little bit? I'll explain later. So there's a silent interval. And then there's this very conspicuous release of the glottal stop, the glottal closure. But look at the other one, it was the same. Oh, I'm sorry. It was the same word pronounced by another speaker, and it came out looking like an aspirate. You can't see the glottal release, you can't see anything there, and I can't see any interval. Well, at the end of our data collection, that was very brief, we found that this was pervasive, that aspirates that looked like ejectives corresponded with almost 56% of the adjectives. That's incredible. You can read like this. Columns indicate the intention of the speaker, but lines indicate what the acoustic phonetic inspection, spectrograms, waveforms told us about the appearance. Looked more like an aspirate, for example, looked more like a plain voiceless, for example, this kind of thing. So we ended up with too many of these. And we asked ourselves, is there any statistics we can do with such a confusing set of observations? Well, our speakers were very shy, and we.
First of all, I apologize. I don't speak English. My name is Marcelo Meira. I'm from Universidade Estadual da Baia, and
you took
Marcelo.
Yeah, well, there's yeah, somebody said something.
Please go ahead. Do not worry.
Okay. So they were very shy. They were paid speakers, but they didn't feel comfortable. Carla had to train them to talk to the microphone. But anyway, they did produce their corpus, but we ended up having no repetition, just one. So we couldn't run a mixed model or anything. So we just ran a very simple linear model with all the observations. And the only thing that R showed is this language method. There was a difference between Quechua language and Spanish language. That's what it says here, because this crazy thing of having the variables in alphabetical order, Quechua comes before Spanish. So, and that was all. It didn't say much. So we decided to remove the confusions, those things that looked like aspirates, from the corpus, and run the thing again. Okay, now it says that ejectors are doing something in this language. Okay, and this is more in line with what we expected. So we decided to present this for discussion as a poster, of course, because this is a very preliminary work at LabFon. We presented it last year. And as a final remark about this data set, we had this, with the filtered data, after removing the ambiguous stops, we had this apparently distinct pattern in H1 minus H2, and also in fundamental frequency, but we are not sure because we didn't run any other tests due to the size of the sample too small. But visually, there are some interesting things, like it seems like Spanish, they were all male, is uniformly creaky once here in the voiced and in the voiceless stop. In also lower, which is consistent, lower F0. So this was indicative data. We moved on to try to do a little more. And I think the best expression for this was the title we gave to that paper, which was Confusion or Mess Timing. Okay, because they, since both aspirates and adjectives have low VOTs, at least in Quechua, they might be just confusing the categories because they are away from their homes a long time and they speak Spanish and Portuguese, or it's just a matter of masking, okay? There's an anticipation of the glottal burst release and it gets completely masked by the noise, the aspiration noise that builds in the mouth, since you have no glottal constriction anymore. Okay, so this was the question we presented there. We got some interesting discussions, and we went on to investigate Quechua proper, and this had it in Peru. So I went ahead and found some funds to send Carla to Peru, and just to remind you, it's a recapitulation. Quechua has plain voiceless, aspirate adjective, and Spanish has voiceless and voiced stops. Okay, so everything in Quechua is voiceless. Okay, let me introduce, I introduced the sociological concept, the useful sociological concept of the coloniality of power. And now let's introduce a useful psychological concept that I think goes with the drift distinctions. It was proposed by Giles. Howard Giles is Santa Barbara, University of California, Santa Barbara professor, who is also editor of, I guess, Diaz, no, not from Diaz in Psychology, an important journal in psychology of language. And he proposes, he and his co-authors propose that there are some measurable changes in behavior that we make in response to others. You know, we change our behavior in the presence of someone else, another social group, another culture. And the useful distinction that I think goes with drift, can be combined with drift, is convergence and divergence. Convergence is, of course, reduce differences, and divergence increase differences. Okay, so take note of that. You're gonna look for drifts in the bilinguals, but we are going to really make it now. The missing branch is no longer missing. You have Quechua there for monolinguals too. So, Spanish Quechua and Spanish Quechua bilinguals. I'm so sorry it took me so much time to set up this this PowerPoint from bits and pieces of other PowerPoints that I forgot Roxana's surname. And Roxana was the person we hired, but this is not really important. The person who was really interested in this study, because she is a scholar of Quechua. She studies her native language, Quechua, and of course she's perfectly fluent in Spanish. And we were fortunate enough to get her contact, and we asked her if she could be the interpreter, the translator for the Quechua speakers, and she was incredible. For you to have an idea, she has a doctorate in Quechua literature. And she's now very much interested in studying linguistics. She said she wouldn't charge anything, but we said, no. This is professional work, so go ahead and charge at least your hours. And so she was helpful with finding these bilinguals in Lima when Carla arrived at Lima and made recordings at Lima. And but she was incredible in traveling with Carla to her hometown, which is Cosecane in Cusco, and finding the monolinguals and serving as a translator and helping us with carrier sentences and everything. So this is exactly the same design with all these variables. We maintain our dependent variables, our acoustic phonetic parameters, because they are very much related to that ladder fog picture that we saw back then. And then we presented the participants with these carrier sentences, very simple carrier sentences. And this is just for you to have an idea that we had a small set of data, and now we have a decent set of data. Okay? Statistical analysis is now our problem. Why? Because we can do fashionable statistics, mixed effects models and everything, but we're not quite sure. We're not quite sure about the interpretation of significance or whatever, or differences. We wanted to go into Bayesian statistics, but we had no time, so we had to run frequent tests, and we got results that are quite all right for VOT. In monolinguals and bilinguals, as expected. You can see this in the arrows here. Ejectives and aspirates are not distinct. They both have long VOTs, and this holds for monolinguals and for bilinguals. Okay, so far so good. Even this kind of model, which is not what we are trying to head at, but we are still short of knowledge to get there. Okay, so this is quite all right. This is beautiful because we could separate heterobilinguals and monolinguals, subgroups, and see what they do, the same as many scholars who have studied bilingualism. They have phonetic drift, all right, and the direction is convergence. So the aspirated of the bilingual goes a little bit down here in the VOT because it's converging towards Spanish. Okay, so this is, VOT is paradise. Now, again, we Paxson says because of normality, this was not normal, so now we have to change that, the test, but that's all right. Here, Spanish, this one was scheduled, this one Spanish, bilinguals and monolinguals. The same, VOT of bilinguals converges, but now towards Quechua. It's a little bit higher. And it's interesting that differently from the other set of data where we had a variation coefficient that was unbearable, 42% or something like that. Here, the variation is so small that means of 33 milliseconds and 26 milliseconds come out distinct. That's really amazing. The data, the distributions are really very narrow compact. But that's where the happy ending ends, because here we get into a lot of trouble. We expected, according to Laboratório and other people who have described ejectives, we expected the burst amplitude of the ejective to be higher than that of the aspirate, but there's no distinction there. It's 11 dB in 13 dB. This is really with a lot of variation. The program is giving us marginal significance. And that's kind of weird from the physical point of view, from the point of view of that the picture, the Laboratório diagram, that beautiful Laboratório diagram. And the same goes for bilinguals, but because there is a distinction, all right, but it's very small. It doesn't look like that powerful release of the ejective that we sometimes listen to. Okay, so I think there's measurement error here. It's very easy to have errors because this is repetitive. That repetitive activity. So we have to end up writing a script. And we tried several windows for measuring this amplitude. We may have come up with a round window that is perhaps not as fit as it should be. We don't know, because in the meantime, something happened, the pandemic. There was a pandemic outbreak, and we couldn't do it face to face, trying out meticulously crafting the window to make the right script. So through the internet, these things sometimes become very difficult to discuss. So the three of us, Antônio participated, and he loves it. I'm very happy with this first amplitude results. We are going to do something about it pretty soon, but Carla has to get her scholarship. She is next in a line to receive one. I guess she will, and then we will. Okay. F0, the other weird result. It's very simple. F0 seems to mean nothing. This is not in accordance with that figure, the Rutherford figure. If you have a raised larynx, one should expect that the F0 of the surrounding the ejective would be a little bit higher, but it's chaotic. It doesn't distinguish anything. There is one very uninteresting result. The two languages are distinct, but since Quechua has no voiced stop, three voiceless, I'm sorry, three voiceless stops. Okay, so it's natural that as vowel after the stop has slightly higher pitch. This is not surprising at all. This is the only result distinguishing the two languages. The rest didn't work. And finally, the parameter that did work, H1 minus H2, the difference in amplitude between the first and second harmonic. Of course, of the following vowel, very first periods of the following vowel. I think here we've got a better window, but I'm not totally happy about this window. We should be able to sharpen this window, but we haven't, in the pandemic. This was the result with the script that we ended up with before and during internet discussions before the pandemic and internet after the pandemic. But there's something very interesting, very instigating here. The ejective is distinct. And H1 minus H2 distinguishes ejectives from all other categories. See, in multiple comparisons using the Tucky test. Same goes for bilinguals, except the voiced one. I don't know why. Must be error measurement. You still have to sharpen these windows, because it's just the very beginning of the vowel, you know, for F0, for H1 minus H2, etc. Or else it will, the physical effects of the adjective won't remain there for a long time. Okay, but this is beautiful because we are not using mixed effects models and complicated statistics, etc. Just so Wilcoxon's test, no normal distribution, and this is about aspirates. The aspirates of the bilinguals, the Quechua bilinguals, are breathier, have more breathy voice, are exaggerated than those of the monolinguals. So we have enhanced breathiness with Quechua diverging from Spanish. This is an interesting result. I'm happy enough about this result. So between our unhappy results, the homework that we'll have to do again, perhaps when the pandemic is subsiding, so we can get together and craft all those windows and really get an efficient script, or we must learn to do it through the internet. And for the time being, we haven't talked, but we come to no conclusion because deixis is very important in human communication. Tone of voice, tone of voice is all right over the internet, but you know, other behavioral parameters, you know, the postural parameters and so on and so forth. You miss a lot when you're looking at a computer screen. And I don't know how long we are going to have to go on doing this, but I hope not so long. Okay, so summing up, because this is not finished. VOT distinguishes all pairs except aspirate versus adjective, which is a welcome result. They have long VOTs in Quechua. First amplitude distinguishes all pairs. But does it? Is the window right? Except the aspirate and the adjective. I'm not happy about that. It may be a feature of the language, but I want to look a little more into that. F0 seems to be relevant, but I don't accept this as the result, but as the new homework that we have to do. And H1 minus H2 distinguishes the ejectives from all other stuffs. Antonio is very happy about this. I'm very happy about this because our thing now is to study voice quality. H1 minus H2 is a loudness parameter. It's difference in amplitude, but it's also voice quality because the voice becomes creakier after the release of the glottal stop. And the amazing thing is that these parameters show the tendency to diverge in the data. And this seems to be the best measurement we made. It's according to prediction. Burst amplitude calls for reanalysis, F0, which is a pitch parameter, here, the tone, the voice, etc. Also calls for reanalysis. So we have partial results, but they are very instigating from the point of view of the coloniality of power. Is convergence related to motor coordination? Because we found convergence all right, but all in temporal parameters. As divergence of physical limits, perhaps motor coordination does not go with divergence in VOT, stretching the difference. Is divergence, on the basis of this result, is divergence related to language pride? Language pride, are they saying, look, I'm bilingual, but I'm Quechua? And then I asked, because we had this contact with this young woman. We asked whether phonetic drifts are related to resistance to colonization. And here we are talking about indigenous people in the Andes, but we could talk about our indigenous people here if we had a data. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Leonora?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It was surprising for me talk because I can see that you are trying to somehow find an intersection between your fields of interest now. So you are trying to be activist as a linguist. Is that right?
Yes. I've always done that, but more certainly.
So
many people don't know my story as an activist because I wasn't interested in telling. But now that we need to resist, I do tell my history or my story of resistance against the.
I know it well because you passed it. It's not the first time you face this kind of thing in your life. But anyway, it's coming back to the talk. In my PhD thesis, I quoted Picasso, who would have said sometimes, Pablo Picasso, that computers are useless because they only give answers.
Yes.
In your talk, you raise 4 interesting questions. They are really, really interesting questions. I tried to answer myself. I will not dare to answer it here, not before the audience have chance to talk to you. So as I'm kind of a moderator here, I will open now for questions from the audience. So if anybody has a question, you have the choice between writing it in the chat or speaking. I would prefer you to speak. So any questions?
Yeah, please go ahead. I hope you have understood. I tried to make it simple, but I didn't hide any of the problems. That's not my style. It has never been.
So, but nobody. So I will.
Sure, I have a question.
Okay. Rafael, is that you?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, great.
Hello, Eleonora. A very nice talk. Thank you very much. So I have several questions, but I just ask the most important one here. It's very technical. It's not political related. It's very technical because I'm trying to understand your hypothesis here in this last study comparing Quechua and Spanish. And if I understand correctly, so the hypothesis that you're testing here is that there is this convergence in VOT, for example. This is one of the hypotheses that you can test. Yeah. If I understand correctly, so in Spanish you have voiced and voiceless. So you have some consonants that have negative VOT.
Yeah.
These are the voiced, and the other ones that have slightly positive. And in Quechua, you have only consonants with positive VOT and quite high. This is the point. And then what you have is that you have a factor that is the language that the participant is talking. It's either Spanish or Quechua, this one factor. And the other factor is, are they monolingual or bilingual? And then what you're testing here, your hypothesis, if your hypothesis is saying, oh, the people who are bilingual, they converge. So meaning that when they speak Spanish, Spanish has a very, very low VOT because you have this voice, the ones which have negative VOT. When they speak Spanish, so the monolingual, we keep this. When they are bilingual, they tend towards the Quechua. And vice versa, the bilinguals, when they talk Quechua, a language that has very high VOT, they tend to put their VOT down, so go in the direction of Spanish. Mm-hmm. Is this picture that I just described right in your hypothesis or not?
Well, the voiced stop of Spanish doesn't have anything to do with that because there's the voiceless one, and we are comparing the voiceless one with the ones all the catch stops that are voiceless as well. There's no voice stop in Quechua. So it seems that there's conversion toward a shorter VOT because, you know, in a plain voiceless stop, not aspirated or anything, much less ejective, you have to have you have very short VOT, just like Portuguese, you know, very less than 30 millisecond. So the Quechua voiceless series converges in this direction, a shorter VOT. This is the direction of Spanish. But this is interesting for me to discuss with you because you know about a lot about motor coordination, and I know what's behind. And is there a tendency for for convergence timing parameters, because motor coordination is hard. If you try to keep the parameters apart, that might be a constraint on conversions. I don't know. Did you get it? No? Rafael?
I don't know if I can answer the question. That is very complex for time being. I'm just trying to understand your results actually, and your hypothesis, what they are exactly. Yeah. So you're meaning that the people who are bilingual, they tend to converge. This is what you're saying.
Converge as far as
the bilinguals, when they speak Spanish, they will increase the VOT. And when they speak Quechua, they will decrease the VOT globally for the three or the two consonants. This is the hypothesis. Without going into the detail of the consonants themselves, of the classes, adjective, aspirated, or plain, or voiceless and voiced for the Spanish. Without going to this detail globally, what you are saying is that between these two factors, we have a factor that is the language that the participant is talking, and the other factor is the participant bilingual or monolingual. And what you are just trying to prove here is that with this convergence is that you have an interaction effect between these two factors. This is what you're trying to say.
In bilinguals, of course, the non-linguals don't have this.
Yeah, of course, this is for no, I mean, if you have a factor that is monolingual versus bilingual, and the other factor is, I'm talking Spanish, I'm talking Quechua, and then the test that you have to do is just to test if the interaction factor between these two factors, so the language and the fact that it's monolingual or bilingual, if they interact in a significant way. This is the test that you have to show us, actually, or you have to do in your study, I think. And then this is what was lacking to me in your exposition. But I think if you come back to some slides, and then you have this graphics that you put, so the VUT for Quechua and Spanish, monolingual and bilingual.
Where? VUT.
Go up.
This?
Yeah, this one and the previous one, where you have yellow graphs, yellow box plots.
Yeah.
This one there, both. So they go in the different in different directions. When you go from bilingual to monolingual, here it increases. This is what you're saying. Yeah? And the next one, it decreases when you go from bilingual to monolingual. This is when they are talking Quechua, and the other ones when they are talking Spanish. Is this?
No.
The next one, so the 18th.
Next one.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, it goes into
Spanish.
Yeah, and the only test that you have to do here is to show us the p-value for the interaction factor between language, because you have this in your variables. You have the language, and so the language is either Spanish or Quechua, and you have the fact that the participant is bilingual or monolingual.
Okay, but this distribution was not normal. I didn't know how to run.
If you have a significant interaction factor between these two factors, and then you have this hypothesis that is confirmed, so the people are converging.
Okay, I'll try to perhaps look at ways to transform the data so that they can go through a test that takes the interactions.
You have already the model, yeah? You have your model, and you have...
But we used Wilcoxon's because the distribution didn't look normal at all. That was.
You have already your model, and then you have this variables in your model. If you go back to the first, when you present the data, you have the factors there. So I don't want to monopolize the speech here. Just quickly, this one.
Unavailable? Yeah. No, the available one. Okay.
One, yeah. Exactly, this one. And then you have the variables here. Okay, you have the language and you have the participant. And what you have to do here, exactly. And then what you have to show is just the ANOVA test on the interaction factor between language and participant. And then if you show this, of course, you have all the variables. If you show this, if this vector is significant, and then your hypothesis is confirmed that you have convergence. If I understand correctly, is that the people who are bilingual in your data, they tend to have a more uniform VUT between the two languages. They don't go to the extremes, because you have the extreme in Spanish that is very low VUT because you have the voiced ones, and in Quechua you have very, very high VUTs because you only have non-voiced stops. Okay, so I will stop here, but we can discuss later if you want.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I'd love to include Antônio in this conversation, and also my statistics advisor, someone from Unicamp, who said, no, let's do Wilcoxon because of the distribution. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll let the others do the comments. Thank you, Eleonora.
I'm very grateful for your comments, both of you, Henny and Rafael.
I'm glad we had a nice discussion here, and we will have time to discuss. So please, I ask the audience to keep the questions for later, because
okay.
Thais has a question. So you are
no, I did. It was just a comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it was just to ask Eleonora if she intended to run anything on perception, because I think with the Brazilian Indians I worked with, they were very sensitive to identify who, even if the person wasn't completely fluent, they knew who belonged to their native language or not. So in a way, these details will be expressed in perceptual experiments. So it's a suggestion, because it's very interesting in terms of identity, ethnical identity.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a good suggestion. We hope sometime we get there. We have to understand the production data in order to be able to design a perceptual test. It makes sense, and I'm not sure we have understood it all.
Politically, what my point is that politically, it's a good way of supporting the way they identify themselves linguistically as well.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's my point, like looking at the other side of your contribution, which is the political activism.
Mm-hmm. Well, we should discuss it later.
Yeah, all right, sorry.
At 3:05, I think, 3:05. And I think we can go ahead without a break for the first talk in the... thank you very much, Eleonora. Sorry for... Thank you. We are going to discuss about this talk later, a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. And I will... who is going to present now? I have Marcelo Meira Alves, Maria de Fátima de Almeida Baia, or Adriana Stella Cardoso Lessa de Oliveira? Who is going to give the talk, a pilot study on the prosodic aspects of children-directed signing in Brazilian Sign Language? Somebody is typing. So let me check who is here. Thank you, Eleonora. So let me check here. Maria de Fátima. Maria de Fátima, is that you? Maria de Fátima Baia? Maria de Fátima, are you there?
I wasn't. Now I am.
So can you share? Are you going to give the first talk now in the afternoon?
Yes. Yes.
So
I'm
can
going
you share your screen?
Yeah. Just a second. I'm using two devices. So I'll be using my mobile just to talk. And then I'm going to share using my computer.
Perfect. Yeah, I can see you twice.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
Now make it full screen. So The first talk in the afternoon is going to be given by Maria de Fátima Almeida Baia, a pilot study on the prosodic aspects of child-directed signing in Brazilian Sign Language. So, Maria, you have 15 minutes to talk, and you can start now. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Can you see me? Because I cannot see my camera.
No, go ahead.
Yeah? Okay,
everything
good.
is perfect.
All right. Well, just one question. Is Marcelo Meira there? Adriana Lessa? Are they there? Can you tell me, please?
I think they are not here. They let you alone.
Oh my gosh, that's not news. Okay, so I'll start the talk because if you have questions, I'm not the expert in sign language. Adriana Lessa, the third author, she is the one, and I hope she comes. Anyway, I can write down and I can answer later. So I'm Maria de Fátima Baia, and today I'm presenting this study. It's actually an ongoing study. It comes from Marcelo Meira Alves' PhD thesis. He's my student. I am his supervisor, and Adriana Lessa de Oliveira, she's the second supervisor. It's about prosodic aspects of child-directed signing in Brazilian Sign Language. So this is the outline of my talk, and I hope to be able to talk about these topics in order to show you the results. Is very important to show you what the literature says about this kind of phenomenon. So the goal of our study is to investigate this child-direct signing. Actually, the first question was, there is this sort of phenomenon when we see Libras, we see people using Libras with children. And the second question was, what kind of parameters we can find when they are using Libras, not with adults, but with children. When you talk about this sort of phenomena in oral language, there are many studies. So here I wrote some of them. You can see very good ones. And in general, they claim that in the sort of speech, we find alterations like at synthetic, discursive, lexical, and prosodic levels. There's a study of mine in collaboration with Vera Pacheco, Glaucia Ferreira. It wasn't in sign language, it was in Portuguese, Portuguese twins and their parents. And we showed that there is a relationship between CDS and the first patterns used by children in their lexical expansion. And also literature in general say that caregivers adapt their way of speaking to a more childlike way, using words like in Portuguese, instead of saying comida, we say papá for food. Instead of saying dormir, we say naná for sleeping. And Brunner says that this specific language used by parents to interact with their children becomes adequate to their linguistic level, demonstrating an empathy for the linguistic development of babies. It's important to say that there is affection, there is emotion involved, not only, oh, let's talk a very simple way in order to make the child understand. Actually, it's a very simple way in order to make the interaction more interesting, and as Winnicott says, a sort of environment holding thing. And CDS, although we found in Portuguese, in English literature, we cannot say that this phenomenon is universal, because it's not. It's related to culture. There is a study by Patricia Kuhl, and she shows that in cultures like Kaluli in New Guinea, adults do not use this kind of modification when they are talking to children. Well, when the culture uses, what kind of aspects we can find? In phonology, we usually find exaggerated intonation, high pitch, slow rhythm. I have a PhD student now. She's a music therapist. She's a musician, and we are going to study this part, the part of rhythm, because in general literature talks about the melody, intonation, but we do not know many things about the rhythm aspects. That's what we are doing now. And besides rhythm, the counter, long pauses, phonological reduplications, as the examples I just showed, and simplification of syllabic structure. And regarding syntax, we find short and simple sentences, semantics, the use of diminutives, concrete words, and pragmatics, we find the predominance of directive, illocutionary act, and questions. So lots of requesting, ordering, suggesting when we are talking to children and listen to them. Regarding this sort of language in sign language, we found very interesting studies on Israeli sign language, the ones by Horst Richter, Meyer, and Futz. And these studies, they show that there are phonetic modifications. So it's not only found in oral language. In sign language, we can find as well, such as displacement, repetitions, stretching, and amplification of signs. I'm listening to someone. Do you want to talk? No, okay. So when they analyzed the sort of phenomenon in Israeli sign language, they could find modifications as displacement, repetitions, stretching, and amplification of signs, as well as the intensification of iconic signs. I'm going to show examples using Libras. So we found it too. And about the prosodic aspects, it's important to say that there are not many studies when we are talking about sign language regarding the prosody. And in ASL, American Sign Language, there is a study by Brentari, and she says that when we analyze these aspects in this language, we observe that they are marked by fundamental distinctions between what is segmental and what is prosodic. I'm going to skip this, but if you are interested, I can show you the slide because of the time, it's short. What is important, very important here, is to say that when we talk about prosodic structure in sign language, we need to consider the kinematics of movements like displacement, duration, velocity, acceleration, if we want to understand what they are using as what we call intonation in oral language, accent, stress, and rhythm. Marcelo's Meira thesis, the one he is working on now, it's about the accent and stress and rhythm in Libras. The adult, the target Libras, as well as the Libras being learned by children. So what we know about prosodic aspects of Libras so far, there are two studies we found, one by Góes and another one by Souza, and they observed that no manual expressions perform specific prosodic functions, and they are very frequent. So in general, when we want to see the prosody in Libras, we see modification of the trunk, the torso, head, the upper facial expressions, like in the forehead, eyebrows, eyes, lower facial expressions in the mouth, the cheek, and lips. You are going to see that Brazilian parents, they use a lot the cheeks when they are talking to the children using Libras. So this is our study. We had 5 subjects. We could have their help. The 51, Maria, she didn't allow us to show her picture. So here you can see the drawing, a very beautiful one Marcelo chose. So what we did to analyze the CDS in Libras, we did a mapping of the prosodic aspects based on description of Libras given by 4 deaf natives and a bilingual hearing informant. So she speaks Portuguese and she's a signer as well. And the method and the hypothesis, well, the hypothesis we were following is, as in oral language and as in Israeli Sign Language, the phenomenon of child direct speech can be found in Libras, as is a natural human language. Besides that, it's in Brazil, and our Brazilian culture in general, we use it. And to verify this hypothesis, a picture naming experiment was designed by the authors of this study. We created a list of 51 words based on previous studies on child-directed speech, not only the one I did with Portuguese, but other studies as well. Marcelo is not there. Can someone tell me if he is? If he is there, just say something. Marcelo, se você está aí, só me dá toque, fazendo favor. Ou Adriana.
Acho que ele não está.
Sim, estou presente.
Ah, tá.
Okay, good. So Marcelo asked me to to tell you that what we did. This experiment, we asked these parents to name, they had to pretend they were talking to their children. And then to compare the prediction, we used dictionaries like the one made by Capovilla. So we are going to show you how they sign when they are talking to their children. And the example Marcelo is going to show you, because he took pictures, and he did it based on the dictionaries. That's the thing he asked me to say. Certo, Marcelo? Para falar que a parte da produção esperada, sem ser a CDS, você se baseou no dicionário, certo? No exemplo do dicionário.
Perfeito. Isso, no Capovilla.
All right. So the results here. So here we have the parameters or the aspects we analyzed based on previous studies, like the modification of arms and hands movements, hand modification, facial expressions, body movements, iconicity. The most frequent one was the facial expressions. So this kind of aspect was the most frequent one, and the one that made what they were signing when they are talking to their children different from what they were signing when they talk to adults. So like raising, lowering their eyebrows, close reading or squinting their eyes, puff off cheeks and lip articulations, include the tongue out. And the second most frequent one was iconicity. It's a complex one because we have 2 types of iconicity. The use of classifiers and the constructed action as well. I'm going to show you the example, and I'm going to explain the difference between them. And then body movements, modification of arms, hands, and hand modification as well. So here, the results, just to show you some examples of amplification. So we have the regular prediction of bom, good in English, bom in Portuguese. Here is the cell. If you don't know what cell is, it's a writing system Adriana Lesta de Oliveira created for Brazilian Sign Language. I'm going to ask you, Marcelo, please, to post on the chat the link so you can see the blog. Marcelo, você pode postar o link? All right, good. So here we have the regular projection when you are talking to adults, and then here is the mother pretending she's talking to her child using Libras and using amplification. So saying the same thing, but using a different phonetic parameter. And this one is the example of displacement. So here is the regular projection of fish in Libras. And then we have the prediction of the same sign, but with displacement. A dad, a father pretending he is talking to his children. This is the intensification one, the regular prediction of many very much. So in Libras, we have one sign for many and for very much. It's the same sign. And then we have the prediction of muito, of many very much, with intensification. So this mother, she's signing the same, pretending she's talking to her child. And the facial expressions, the most frequent one, we have 2 examples, so bad and dirty. So bad and dirty, the regular prediction. And then we have the intensification of the sign. So here, the bad, using more like facial movements, and then dirty here. And body movements. So for the sign pouco, a little, and then pouco with body movement. Sorry, I wrote intensification, but it's body movement. Sorry about that. And then iconicity. So here is something very beautiful we find in sign language. For those who don't know, in sign language, there is a strategy very common called constructor action. So we have this kind of strategy here. He's signing gato, cat, in Libras. And this strategy is used in sign language when the signer uses his, her face, head, body, hands, and other non-manual cues to represent actions, thoughts, feelings, attitudes. And besides the constructed action type of iconicity, we have the classifier one. This is more morphological one, yeah. And it is used to express events and states. And if I'm not very clear, if you want to know more, you can ask Marcelo to explain it better in Portuguese, and I can translate it into English. So the final remarks here, we are very happy. There's a CDS signing in Libras, and this is a pilot study. We are now dealing with the calculation because we want to compare, to use the statistics. We are thinking about using Elan, but I remember as well the software. Adriano talked about, I remember last Eicefala, the optical flow. Marcelo has been reading some of your papers, Adriano, and we are just thinking if it would be possible to conduct this kind of analysis using the software. Actually, this is not a remark, it's a question. And the results of our study indicate the occurrence of changes in the phonetic aspects of the sign. It's general, but now we are going to classify in a better way, in a more clear way, as changes in the movements of the arms, hands, changes in the configuration of hand, configuration of no manual expressions, body movements, and iconicity. And even though our study has pointed to child-directed signing in Libras marked by prosodic characteristics, it does not mean that there are no specific modifications at other linguistic levels. There are, but for his PhD, we are going to focus on the prosodic marks. But there are, yeah, we didn't present here because we know short time. And this paper, we are not going to submit because it's going to be submitted somewhere else. Actually, it's a red. But the other linguistic levels we intend to do, not for his PhD, but an extra study. So, obrigada. Yeah, thanks, and obrigada, thanks in Libras. You can see, very nice, the informant saying, the reference, and thank you so much. I'm sorry if I spoke too much.
Maria de Fátima. Yeah, you passed a little of the time, but we started earlier. After starting, I realized that we should have a break with a.
Oh yeah, that's why I was late because I thought it was a break.
Anyway,
Yeah,
as you extended your talk for a little longer than expected, we are now on time.
Okay,
we have time for questions.
Good.
So if anybody has a question, let me see in the chat here. No. They only say thank you. But instead of thank you, they should raise a question. Lais?
Yeah, okay.
No, Lais wrote a message, but...
No, let Lais go first.
No, Adelaide has an observation. Adelaide, please speak.
Okay, thank you. Fátima, thanks so much for your talk. I would say that your examples are very good for us to think about multimodality of speech that we've been observing in oral languages, but we are observing also in gestural sign languages. So I thank you very much for your talk and for the examples you gave us. And if I can suggest also for you to read some papers, of André Xavier. He's been working with intensity in Libras also, for adults, of course, but maybe they can be useful for you too.
Okay, lovely, André. Yeah, thank you, Adelaide.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can I say something, honey?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Fátima, it was very good. Thank you very much for your talk. Yeah, I was going to suggest that you look at André Xavier's papers and also Adriana Uhini and Eric Bateson's software. A student of mine called Rosana Passos did her PhD using their software, but unfortunately there was a mess before she finished her PhD, and she didn't really conclude as we expected, but there is lots of information there if you need to know where it is. It's an our postgraduate program at UFMG, but you can go and look there. And the other thing I would like to maybe say, have a look at is individual differences and dialectal differences. I don't know if you're concentrating in one dialect, but a great thing about Libra is that different dialects sign differently. And
it's one community. It's in Vitória da Conquista, né, Marcelo? É a comunidade do dialeto daqui, né?
Isso, perfeito.
Yeah, but maybe it's a good thing. Yeah, then you constrain that because then you can focus more on
be careful about to talk about Libras, but then talking about this dialect of Libras. Yeah,
because that was my point. Because maybe you wouldn't get a good result because you'd mix up different varieties of it, but you know what you're doing. No, that's fine. That was all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think I will have Rafael and Eleonora. Eleonora, can you ask your question?
Let Rafael speak first.
Okay,
Everybody has listened to me for a long time. If there's time, I will just ask a brief question.
I don't know why Hanny said I have a question.
Because you have your hand raised.
If this is a method for you to know if people want to ask questions or not.
But in theory, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Eleonora?
Okay, congratulations, Fátima. I'm very happy to see your progress. We talked about something related to this. No, it was music.
Yeah, tomorrow music. Tomorrow is the day.
But my question is there anything that you would say is postural? Postural prosody that, it's the way you lean, the way. Is there anything like that in Libras? I don't know. I know very little about Libras, but I would, if there exists such a thing, I would think of it as a prosodic feature.
There is. Tem, né, Marcelo, a respeito da postura, uma prosódia que é feita por meio da postura do corpo.
Sim, o estudo também aponta que essa inclinação corporal, ela está ligada às marcas prosódicas também da língua.
Yeah, so yeah, the study on American Sign Language he's talking about, it talks about the postural thing in prosody in American Sign Language. I didn't have time to show you, that's the reason why I deleted, but Marcelo wrote it. I'm sorry, but there he is. But in Libras, we are still trying to see, right, Marcelo? A gente não encontrou muito, né, exemplo de muito movimento brusco, né, do corpo. Foi mais a face, yeah, more facial expressions and iconicity, yeah?
Mas ainda assim, nos dados, apresentam um pouco de inclinação corporal, encolhimento de ombro, uma porcentagem muito menor do que as expressões faciais.
Yeah, so we had this kind of example, but a few examples. That's the reason why we didn't mention. But we are going to try to have more subjects actually, because we just had 5. So we are trying to have more subjects. And maybe if we have time, Thais, because Marcelo, he is now in his 2nd year. So he still has, he has 2 years. So maybe we can try to compare. Like, I mean, I can go to São Paulo and talk to the community there in São Paulo just to compare if you can find some dialect traces, like, yeah, where it's different. But there is Eleonora.
Okay, so thank you. Eleonora, can I go ahead? Next talk.
Sure.
Let's move to the next talk. We are now almost on time. Still 2 minutes ahead, which is good. Thais, next talk is from you and Mara Lima Oliveira Guimarães. Who's going to present?
Oops, it's going to be me. I was going to play a pre-recorded one, but I think I'm going to go ahead and present it now.
Okay, so this is entitled An Exemplar Model in L2 Phonology.
Yeah, oh, Daniela is there, so she can help me.
This idea of pre-recording is good.
Yeah.
I would say that it has 16 minutes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead with it. So it's a pleasure to be here, and our paper is, the title is An Exemplar Model in L2 Phonology, a Combined Approach, and you're going to find out what combined is. It's a paper by me and Daniela Mara Lima Oliveira Guimarães, but it's a paper that has contribution for everyone from the lab at some extent. So the first point, it's running, hang on, it's running. Oh, no. Okay, let me see if I managed to, can you see just the summary?
Yes.
Okay. So the first point we wanted to make was about phonological representation. Oh no, phonological representations. And typically what we have is phonemes as units of phonological representations. And how do you figure out what phonemes are? We have minimal pairs that they have to have different meanings, and you identify the sounds that are contrastive. And what happens to semantics after phonemes are identified? Semantics is forgotten. You don't talk about it anymore. And this same approach is also used in distinctive features theories, where semantics is forgotten. And an important point is redundant or predictable information is not part of representations. That is, allophone or redundant information is discarded. Generative models, either linear or multilinear, pose processual mechanisms to convert underlying representations into surface ones. So you have a single representation and you convert that into several different outcomes. These arrows mean the processing of phonology. And more recently, not so recent, but in '93, Prince and Smolensky proposed optimality theory. And a great thing about optimality theory is different from previous models. It's an output-based theory. So it talks about the outputs, what are the forms and where do those forms come from? They are generated by the generator, evaluated by the eval, and then they are listed. And how do you know what's your best candidate from the all potential ones? It's the universal constraints that will guide you to find out what a good candidate or the optimum candidate is. There are two things that are not very promising in optimality theory, at least the traditional models. It's variation, it doesn't account for it. Some people try to account for it, but it's not very good, at least in my understanding. And also semantics is discarded like in any previous models. So we move on to exemplar models. Exemplar models are could be understood as output-based, as the way you build your representations by experienced exemplars. And representations, abstract representations, emerge from generalizations that come from the context, production and perception, variation, social and individual parameters, and also have semantics and morphology. And on the left, you can see this picture from Johnson 1997 that has this broad view of exemplars. They encompass all these things. This figure from my work with Daniela Guimarães, we published it in 2013. And what you can see in the gray line there, I'm not moving my mouse because it seems when I move it, the slide moves on. This gray line here is the masculine forms in Portuguese. I'm sorry, it's written the orthographic forms just for the sake of clarity. But what we have is you have idiosyncratic plurals like boy, y is not vacu, if the feminine is vaca. And you have a case where you don't have a morphological mark, and you have to learn that the feminine has morphological mark, but not the masculine. And you have the regular case where the masculine ends in u and the feminine ends in a. So how do you know when you learn a new noun if it's masculine or feminine? It's very likely if it ends in a, that's going to be feminine. Of course, there are few exceptions, 4 or 5 nouns like a tribo, why it's not o tribo. Why it's a tribu if it ends in u. The masculine, you have more alternatives. So you figure out from your experience in the way you made generalizations. There's another picture from the same paper, and what we were concerned about was pretonic vowels. And we got this example of the syllable me, me, and me, which may alternate pretonically. So you have something like metal in metal, but you don't have metal. On the other hand, medida and medida, but you don't have medida. And menino, 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 you have these 3 options. How do you know that? You know that from experience, and you expected to get any of these in pretonic positions, but you're not expected to get more. For example, like medida to alternate with modida, because that's not in the network. This model is inspired in exemplar models and also the network model proposed in Morphology by Joan Bybee in her book Morphology. So what do we know about L1 and L2 previous research? It's usually based on phonemic view. It's posted a single representation when non-redundant elements are not present, and we question that. The acquisition of linguistic categories is seen as isolated from social processes and changes during one's lifespan. And nowadays, one's experience throughout life is being brought into theories. Orthography is considered marginal and separated from phonological representations, and nowadays trying to be accommodated into linguistic representations. And the difference between L1 and L2 explained by the age of acquisition, the critical period hypothesis. We can talk about it later. And we're going to question these and offer an alternative. And to that, we're going to consider the speech learning model that was presented this year by Feg and Bonn. Previously, Flag has presented in 1995 his speech learning model that's been used for years on end now, and this is a revised version. And they make some good points. One is how phonetics systems of individuals reorganize over the lifespan. And what that means is that throughout a life, you can change your linguistic system. And there are lots of research that show that. Differences between L1 and L2 learners in terms of perception and production are related to the fact that L2 uses the same mechanism that operates in L1 learning. So it's not different, you use the same thing. The reasons why you have an accent, we can go on about it. Their model is basically proposing 3 levels: a sensory motor level, a phonetic category level, and a lexico-phonological level. So we considered back to exemplar models. What do you know? How do you categorize L2 in exemplar models? The first example is the word paper. And when you learn paper, you know that per is aspirated. The first per, initial per is aspirated, but not the second one. So you know there are aspirated and an unaspirated per. You have to figure out how that works. And in cake, you know one is aspirated and the final k is not aspirated. And in take, you only have an aspiration in ter, but we don't know yet if there is an unaspirated ter, but it's very likely there is, as you have the other ones aspirated. So it's by experience that you're going to build representations, and phonetic detail or redundant information is part of phonological representations. And this seems to be well established now. But exemplar models go further. For example, when you learn all those words, you figure out there is a diphthong A. So in paper, cake, take, ate, gray, date, you have the same sort of pattern. They're not the same because you have several exemplars, but they figure out in one category there will be the A diphthong somehow. And it's interesting to mention that in a word like date, you have the date, the year, and the month and the day, but you also have taking someone out because you date, you like that person, and you have 2 different exemplars. It's not just the phonology, you have the phonology and the semantics that moves along in building your grammar. So here is the combination of Flag and Bond and exemplar models in L2 phonology that we are proposing. The sensory motor level, we agree with Flag and Bond in proposing these levels, but we add an orthographic level. And the sensory motor level, we include meaning into it. So it's neuromotor schemas level, which includes meaning. The perceptual articulatory level will include context. When you learn a word, you sometimes even know where you learned it. And you know which sound it starts with, what's the last sound, if there is 1 syllable, 2 syllables, all that's related to context. And also if you move on, like, where that word occurs. And these will be example and construction levels. That as well is going to tell you in terms of grammar what it is. And the orthographic level that we are posting that they didn't claim. So this figure, what does it show? You know in your L1 the word casa, and you know what a casa is, but you don't know how to pronounce it. But suppose that you get experience with L2 and you know it could be either house or housey. How are you going to figure that out? It depends on the exemplars you build and become more robust and you're going to use. And of course, it's not going to be just a word. It will be the word in context. Like it could be a big house, a blue house, a green house, and house in different contexts. And later on, you learn something like house, the orthography of that word. But, why doesn't it want to go now? Oh. But then this is the previous slide, right? And this one on the right is life is not so perfect. You can learn the orthography as the last thing, but you can learn the orthography as the first thing. So when you read a word like house, how are you going to read it? You can read it as house, as housey, and you can also read it as hosey. because it would be the Brazilian Portuguese reading for that. But an interesting thing is that we predict you won't read Ozi. Why? Because foreign words in Portuguese, the H is pronounced. So you would get Hosi, but you won't get Ozi. And you would try to work out that pronunciation in context. So these levels, what we argue is that this level is dynamic. You can work from top to bottom or bottom to top, and going through the middle levels, we can talk about it. To test these models, and I thank both of my students, Mateo Freitas and Wellington Mendes, I'm going to mention the papers we published together. This one is with Mateo Freitas, it's SC clusters in Brazilian Portuguese. And what we examined were native words and loan words in Portuguese. And what we know is a word like espaço can also be pronounced spaço with an SC in the beginning of the word, and spa can also be pronounced ispa. What we were interested to know was if loan words and native words were pronounced the same with the E or lack of an E word initially. And for those of you who don't know, in European Portuguese, there is a clear difference. These native words will start with sh, espaço, estádio, escada, and the loan words will be spa, status, skate. The sibilant is different. So we tested that, and we thank Eleonora Albano for putting this beautiful volume of Journal of Portuguese Linguistics together with Didier. It was a great volume. And so this is the results you have. A word initial vowel is longer in native words than loan words. So that means that those words are categorized differently. And another result that's interesting is that when the vowel is not pronounced, what happens is the sibilant will be longer than when the vowel is pronounced. And in both cases, either in loan or native words, the sibilant will be longer when the E is not pronounced. That, an explanation for that comes from the work of Menezes and Albano, where the vowel and the sibilant get together, and that lengthening is explained by that dynamic interaction between the segments. The other occasion we tested it was recently in the ILA 2021 Congress. We examined plural formation in English, a Brazilian Portuguese case study, me and Wellington Mendes. And what we looked at is we've examined CES, consonant ES, in the end of words in Portuguese. So you get like all these words here. And what happens is a word like crepes, like here, crepe. Crepe has an E in theory, but crepes, you don't pronounce the E. In none of these words you expect to pronounce the E, but you always have an S, regardless of the consonant being voiced. For example, Arabs is not Arabs. There is no voice in there. It's always voiceless. In English, we have two different patterns, either CES, like in Portuguese, or CS. And we examined both to test if this little vowel here may played any role in constructing these abstract categories, because there is a preceding evidence that it did in past tense and other words. So results, we found that the CS, like crepes, if the word is isolated, it's 100% of case right. When there is a vowel around, then you get some Z sound, but the preference for S is really strong. And why? Where do you get that? You get that from L1. So you don't only transfer sounds from L1, as Flegg would propose, but you transfer patterns, you transfer exemplars, you transfer different patterns. And what happens with the Z sound? As expected, the rate of Z is very low because it doesn't occur in Portuguese, so you have to build that up. But when a vowel is around, you get more Z than expected. And for an assimilation process that Brazilian Portuguese has, instead of Brazilians saying, yes, I am, they say, yes, I am. And that's why we get all these Z sounds here. This diagram that shows the plural formation and the singular in our work. And what you learn is there are cases of irregular plural and regular plural. In the irregular plural, there are cases where nothing happens, and there are ad hoc plurals. And the regular plural could be either sir, the, or is. And of course, sir is the more recurrent one. Why? Because you bring it from L1. Okay, I don't know if I have the time to go on through all that, but I can leave it on in the end of my talk. But the main thing, our main contributions are the relationship of phonetic and semantics, that it goes along with representations all the way, and it changes as representations. You live your life and your representations change. Contextual and distributional patterns are dealt with from L1 and L2. And of course, at some point, you build your L2 in a new space. And this is very interesting because you have your L1, you build your L2, and when you build your L3, you're not going to go back to L1. You're going to go back to L2, which is this foreign language, this a second language. And linguistic representations are dynamic, and that's why we'll change our linguistic representations throughout our lives. Okay, what do we want to do in the future? To look how, to consider how L2 words are produced by illiterate speakers. And fortunately in Brazil, we have people who never learned how to read and write, and we want to see how they deal with that. The L2 orthographic representations are mapped during L2 learning, because of course, if you're claiming orthography is part of the model, it has to play a role when you're learning L2. And how phonetic detail is perceived in L1 and L2, it's a bit of what I mentioned to Eleonora, because it's not to have just the phonetic detail in production, but it's what you do with it when you use your language. So I hope I haven't broken my time, but thank you and the followers in the social networks. This is a website I built back with Henny years ago, and I've just rebuilt it, and it's great. Go and follow us there. Thank you.
Yeah, Thais, you broke the time for a few minutes, but that was, now I see that it was good to start before. Now we are on time.
Okay.
And we still have two talks. And you please put it back to phonologia.org. Because
I don't know. Let me see where I am now.
No, it's you are. So 2 slides after this. We have time for questions. At least one question. Let me see in the chat. Where is? No, nothing. So there are no questions?
I'm sorry, I rushed maybe a bit, but I think the major contribution is to talk about the relationship between semantics and phonology and how representations are dynamic. I don't know.
Wait, Chao Zhu has a question. So Chao Zhu,
thank you, Chao.
Please.
Hi, Professor. Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. It's nice to know this very interesting new model. Could you explain to us a little bit about the role of orthography in your model? When you said that the orthography contributes or shapes the L2 speech learning, do you mean that orthography shapes the phonological representation directly during learning, or orthographic representation is stored along with the phonological representation in the lexicon and then has some influence during the speech production?
Yeah. Well, of course, when you learn an L2, you don't know, you may or may not know the orthographic form. It's like the L1. You're only going to learn an orthographic form when you become literate. So what happens is, if you have access to the orthographic form, that will allow to make generalizations. For example, if you learn house and you learn mouse, you may associate that in the same orthographic patterns. And of course, there will be patterns that are not the same, but you learn they're not the same. And another thing is, there is work in L1 showing that kids, when they learn to write, there is a looping between what's called retroalimentation, like the orthography feeds the phonology and the phonology feeds the orthography. And we haven't examined that in L2, but we believe that might be the case when you have a relationship between what you know about the orthographic representations, you reflect in the pronunciation, and then you check whether or not it was correct or not. I don't know if Daniela wants to say something about it. I hope I clarified your matter.
Okay.
So I think Eleonora has a question.
I'll leave it for later because we are behind.
Thank you very much, Eleonora, because if we can go to the next talk now, we are going to finish in the right time. So thank you very much. We will have time to talk. And
not me. I'll have to leave soon, but
no, not today.
I'll be here tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yes. And in the last day, also, there will be an interesting time for talking. Thank you very much, Chaozu, and thank you very much, Thais and Daniela. The next talk is given by Leonardo Silva and Ronaldo Lima Jr., who is going to talk an analysis of the development of the rhythm of English L2 by Brazilian learners through rhythmic metrics and acoustic parameters.
Yes, I will.
So please share your screen.
Yes.
So Leonardo, you have 15 minutes to talk, and the audience is yours.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Leonardo Teixeira. I'm a graduate student in linguistics at the Federal University of Ceará, and also a member of the Phonetics and Multilingualism Lab. I share the authorship of this work with Professor Dr. Ronaldo Mangueira Lima Jr., who is also my supervisor. This is the presentation plan: introduction, method, results, discussion, conclusion, and take-home message. And to start with, I think it's important to point out that rhythm and L2 development, when it comes to L2 research, there has been more emphasis on the segmental level. This trend can be seen when we consider, for example, the L2 acquisition models, which are available in the literature, which focus on segmental aspects. Now, among all the possible prosodic constructs that could be exploited, rhythm seems to be the least exploited one. And this research reality contrasts with evidence that show rhythm can affect degrees of accent, intelligibility, and comprehensibility. Now, generally speaking, there have been at least 3 research trends on language rhythm. The first one was based on the idea of isochrony. So basically, languages would differ in terms of the recurrent units in the speech signal. So language such as English would be considered more prototypically stress-timed because the interstress intervals would be the regular recurrent units in this language. And language such as Spanish or Italian would be considered syllable timed because the syllables in these languages would be the units that would recur more regularly. And later, this idea of isochrony became a categorical one. So language should belong to one or another category, but the idea of isochrony was considered implausible by a great deal of research. So many researchers started to ask themselves what the physical reality of rhythm was. And then we had some alternative ways of looking at rhythm, not from a categorical point of view, but this time with a more gradient perspective. So we can mention a few approaches within this position, right? Such as the unidimensional rhythm model, the control composition hypothesis, the coupled oscillator model, and the rhythm metrics that were proposed, that started to be proposed in a more bidimensional manner in the 90s. And what these proposals have in common is that languages can behave towards the syllable timed extreme, or towards the stress time extreme, depending on the metrics that are considered. And a third trend on research on language rhythm, in which this research happens, is the multidimensionality, which considers not only duration as a correlate of prominence that plays a role in the perception of rhythm, but also other correlates of prominence, such as fundamental frequency and intensity. Well, because of this, we work with the idea of rhythm as a function of the distribution of prominent elements in the acoustic signal, which involves several acoustic dimensions and may be influenced by the native language of the speaker. We'll look at L2 rhythm development as a gradient, multidimensional, and nonlinear process. So the research aims are to position the rhythm of the Brazilian Portuguese, the North American English, and the English L2 of Brazilians in the rhythmic space. We also intended to evaluate the rhythmic metrics and acoustic parameters when applied to interlanguage, to evaluate the effect of explicit pronunciation teaching on the development of English L2 rhythm by Brazilian learners, and finally to evaluate the influence of Brazilian Portuguese rhythm on the development of the English L2 rhythm of Brazilian learners. Three research questions guided this research. The first one was, how do the metrics and acoustic parameters place the languages and interlanguages in the rhythmic spaces? What is the influence of the rhythm of Brazilian Portuguese on the development of English L2 of learners? And what's the effect of explicit pronunciation on rhythm development? And the hypotheses were that these languages and interlanguages are rhythmically different systems. We also hypothesized that there should be differences between the English L2 of the speakers in the two different stages of development whose recordings were analyzed. And we also expected that the English L2 of the first recording should be more dissimilar to English L1 due to L1 transfer and lack of explicit instruction. Now, in terms of method, our participants were divided into two groups. The first experimental group comprised the 5 Brazilian speakers, learners of English as a non-native language, college students, 4 men, 1 woman, aged between 18 to 24. The control group was made of 5 English L1 speakers, all Canadians, 1 man, 4 women, aged between 23 to 34. And the materials consisted of a text that was read by the learners in 2 different semesters, before and after taking courses in English phonetics and phonology. So they read the same text multiple times. By the way, these recordings were taken 4 times, but for the purpose of this research, we are only considering the English L2 of the first semester and the English L2 of the 4th semester. The material for the Brazilian Portuguese was the same text translated and read by the learners. And finally, the material for English L1 was the same text read by the control group. The recordings were happened in a silent room, sample rate at 44 kilohertz, bit rate of 16 bits saved in WAV, and the data was segmented manually into vowels, consonants, vowel units, which start from the onset of one syllable and finish before the onset of the other, sentences and chunks, and they were manually segmented in PRAT. The data analysis consisted of the automatic extraction of metrics and acoustic parameters. We used the metrics and acoustics extractor that were developed by Silva Jr. and Barbosa, 2019. And the statistical analysis consisted of the implementation of mixed effect regression models via R, which were adjusted for each metric and acoustic parameter. This is a list of the rhythm metrics and acoustic parameters that were employed in this study. So we use the term metrics to refer to the statistic indexes that compute durational features in the language. And we use acoustic parameters to refer to statistical indexes that measure other correlates of prominence, such as F0, intensity, sonority, and also speech rate. In terms of results, we it was very interesting to check that the results were different according to each correlate of prominence. So when it comes to the metrics, when we consider the metrics that reached statistical significance, this was the most recurrent pattern. The English L2 of the first semester was diametrically distant from Brazilian Portuguese. And the English L2 of the last recording was still far from both the native language and the target language, but getting much closer, indicating a developmental path towards the prosodic features of the target language. So this is a Cartesian plan formed by the metrics of the percentage, the standard deviation of consonantal intervals, and the percentage of vocalic intervals, just as the seminal study of Ramos and colleagues, and also a study that was replicated by Arvaniti, 2012. So our data is this one in dark blue. And you can see that Portuguese groups together with languages which are considered prototypically syllable timed, and English L1 groups together with languages which are considered prototypically stress timed, or tending towards the stress time dimension, like German and English too. We can see the same pattern recurring again. So when we consider, for example, the VARCOs, which are the variability coefficients, basically standard deviation measures which are normalized for speech rate, we see the same pattern recurring again, like the English L2 of the first semester being different from both the native language, Brazilian Portuguese, and the English L1, and the English L2 of the last semester, after the learners had taken the courses of phonetics and phonology, getting much closer to the English L1. So the same pattern repeats for all the other metrics that reached statistical significance. We can observe the same pattern in the box plots for other PVIs measure. Again, the English L2 of the first semester with the most extreme values towards the stress timing extreme, and getting much closer to the prosodic patterns of the English L1. Here we have a metric, which is the rhythm ratio. Again, the same pattern, because this metric, the rhythm ratio, the closer the language is to 100, the most syllabic timed is considered. So Brazilian Portuguese has the highest level of RR, rhythm ratio, and English L2 one with the most extreme values towards stress time. The VIs, the variability indexes, another metric, also they capture the same pattern, with the English L2 of the first semester being far from both the English L1 and the Brazilian Portuguese. We also calculated the Euclidean distances to check out how English L2 of the fourth semester had got close to the patterns of English L1. And in all the planes that we designed for VARCOs and PVIs, and the percentage of vocalic intervals and standard deviation of consonants, the English L2 of the fourth semester got much closer to the English L1. Now, when it comes to the results of the parameters, the picture changes a little bit. So for F0 measures, for example, we could see that the English L2 of the first semester was closer to the patterns of Brazilian Portuguese. We can check this in this graph. Also here is just to show that the only participant, the only female participant of our experimental group was the one that registered the highest F0 range in the last semester, which shows that the L1 transfer of F0 patterns may be more persistent in males than in females. Again, the standard deviation of F0 in the first derivative, English L1 showing more complex contours of F0, English L2 of the first semester more similar to the patterns of the Brazilian Portuguese, and the English L2 of the fourth semester moving towards the patterns of the target language. This pattern was also replicated for the spectral emphasis, which is a measure of intensity, which shows how much respiratory effort speakers mobilize when they produce their utterances. And again, English L2 of the first semester was much closer to the Brazilian Portuguese patterns. And then the English L2 of the fourth semester getting closer to the patterns of the target language. So what can we learn with these results? What happened here is that we captured different positioning pattern depending on the correlative prominence that was considered. So for the duration, at the duration dimension, English L2 of the first semester got the most extreme values. On the other hand, for F0 spectral emphasis and speech rate, we could see that the English L2 of the first semester was much closer for the Brazilian Portuguese. So if we think about L1 transfer, it was more evident at the level of F0 and spectral emphasis than at the level of duration. This is just an example of the mixed effect regression models that were ran, that were adjusted for each of the metrics. And these are the metrics that reached statistical significance. In terms of discussion, we could see that the metrics and parameters positioned these languages and interlanguages at rhythmically different systems. There were differences between the English L2 of the speakers in the two different stages. However, there were different developmental paths as captured as function of the dimension of prominence. And this developmental path, this variation is consistent with the definition of inner language that presents itself as a relatively independent system of both L1 and L2, and with the nonlinearity of the linguistic developmental path. And we suggest that at the durational level, learners may have mobilized the process of dissimulation of phonetic categories, displaying exaggerated durational values to maintain the distinction between L1 and L2, similar to what is predicted in the speech learning model for the segmental level. Our results also show that the metrics based on consonants were more consistent and robust, which corroborates our Vanity 2012. And the graded speech rate for English L2 at the fourth semester suggests more fluence of the learners, which can be an effect of the explicit pronunciation. L1 transfer was more salient at the F0 level, and it seems to be more persistent among men, which adds to Urbani 2012. And the limitation of this study were the imbalance between male and female subjects, the number of sentences analyzed, and having analyzed the first paragraph of the text read, because maybe the participants were more tense. In conclusion, we can say that the metrics confirmed that these languages and interlanguages are rhythmically different systems. We also confirmed the hypothesis that the data of English L2-1 would be more dissimilar in relation to L1, English L1. However, we identified orthogonal patterns of rhythmic development, coexisting as a function of the different dimensions of prominence. And we suggest that the interference of F0 patterns of L1 over L2 exists and tends to be more persistent and lasting male subjects. And the future work is to expand and analyze the corpora, including the recordings of the second and third semesters, as well as the other paragraphs of the text. We also intend to analyze the correlation between the measures and perceived degrees of foreign accent, intelligibility, and comprehensibility. So the take-home message that rhythm is the function of multiple degrees of prominence present in the speech signal, and that the developmental path that learners go through seems to be nonlinear and may assume different patterns depending on the dimension of prominence considered. These are the references. Thank you so much. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Okay. I'm checking the chat here. But, So Leonardo, do one thing. So we are a little bit behind the time now, but it was okay. You have the talk was really interesting. Before asking for questions, what do you mean by linearly or non-linearly in this context?
The idea is that when we think about language as a complex system, right, non-linear system, we do not expect that the amount of teaching, for example, will result in a linear result, for example.
Yeah, what's the meaning of linear in this case? What's the meaning?
He's an engineer. He's asking you maybe from a different.
Yeah, no, I know the meaning is different, but I want to know the meaning in this context.
Yeah, for example, we could see that our first hypothesis was that, for example, at the durational dimension, speakers, the learners, would display the patterns, the durational patterns of the L1, the Brazilian Portuguese. However, this didn't happen. It wasn't the case. We saw that these learners presented a higher level of variability in durational terms that did not resemble, that was not similar. It wasn't similar to both the L1, the Brazilian Portuguese, and the target language, the English L2. So it's non-linear in the sense that the interlanguage does not necessarily starts from the first language. That's what it means in this case.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Well, it's a great presentation, really beautiful as well. I like when things are aesthetically beautiful. It was very nice. I think one point, it's my criticism, but I may be completely wrong. When we look at too many parameters, we lose track of what we're looking at or for. And you can look at as many things as you like, but if you think in terms of a complex and dynamic system, all these things, they will go like, they go, come back, go and come back. And there are so many factors that if you don't really focus and say, I'm looking at this and see, and then I'm looking at that, I think it gets too diffuse. I mean, your conclusions are okay in terms of being different systems, in terms of interlanguage, and L2 being more dissimilar. But all these has these findings have a theoretical consequence that I think it should be explored more. You explored more your numbers, your statistics, which is fair enough. But as linguists also, we had to say, oh, okay, why are they more dissimilar? What does it tell us about learning L2? So that would be, I would like in the next talk to be hearing more about those linguistic consequences of your findings.
He presented what happened, and now he is going to find out why it happened.
Yes, that's more or less like that.
For example, why are the results so different for men, for male subjects? Is there an explanation for that?
Yeah, male subjects in general tend to display a more narrow F0 range. Mm-hmm. Yes, so this is consistent with the literature. Also, this work that I've mentioned of Urbani 2012, she suggests that women tend to be more culturally sensitive towards adapting to the target language. And we could see this pattern here, right? We could see that.
Two levels of explanation. One is a physiological level, another is a cultural level, if I could say. Exactly. So it's interesting because we have several factors influencing, and it's interesting to understand to which extent each of them will be more important. Magnum, you have a question.
Oh yes, thank you, Henny. I just want to say that your presentation was really nice. I really like to see, and also your results were interesting. But I also have to agree with Thais that it's kind of difficult to grasp what you want to explain about the rhythm difference linguistically. So you need to, I just think that you need to focus on the most important linguistic predictors. So, and then present it to us like considering what the difference of the languages, which acoustic parameters are really important to explain the difference between the language structures and so on. So using lots of variables, it's good to see, to explore the data, but sometimes they're not explainable, you know. So that's my suggestion to your work, but it's really nice and I love it to see. Thank you.
Magnum, but what he did is not wrong, is correct. First, he measures what happened. Then after understanding what happened, then he can go to why it happened.
Yeah, but regarding the woman, you have only one woman. I think that should be taken away, you know, because it's a bit of a lost soul there in terms of, so Haney asked you that question because you have one set of data that doesn't really tell you much. But it's beautiful. I congratulate you. It was a great talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We are now 7 minutes before schedule, behind the schedule. So we should move to the last talk of today, which is by, I don't know, Atos, Bruno, Aratuza, Wilson, or Ronaldo, or Fabio. Who's going to talk?
It's me, Atos.
Atos, I'm really sorry because I'll have to leave soon. I'm really sorry because I had to do something.
Do not worry. We are going to finish Atos, radio-based function artificial neural network for automatic identification of interlanguage transfer phenomena. You have 15 minutes. We are going to finish maybe 5 or 10 minutes late, but it's okay. It's reasonable. So the audience is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, can you see my presentation? Okay. Yes. My name is Atos Borges. I am a master's degree student from Federal University of Piauí, and I'm at the electrical engineering department at the Federal University, and especially on the field of artificial intelligence and signal processing. And sharing this work with me are Bruno de Souza, which is a undergrad student at the electrical engineering department, Dr. Aratuza Rocha from, I believe, the State University of Ceará, Dr. Wilson Carvalho from the State University of Ceará, Dr. Ronaldo Lima Jr. From the Federal University of Ceará, and Dr. Fabio Barbosa, my supervisor at the electrical engineering department. So the work that I brought here today is the radio basis function artificial neural network for automatic identification of interlanguage transfer phenomena. This is the summary. I'm going to cover a brief introduction about the transfer phenomena, the motivation of our work, the hypothesis and our objectives with this research, the methodology. I'm going to show you a little bit about our work, the results and the conclusions in future works that we intend. So beginning with the transfer phenomena. So I'm not from the linguistics field, so I would try to explain the best I can. So the transfer phenomena, as we see as a connectionist approach, which the language happens because of the neural structure of the brain. So when we receive native input, we produce the native linguistic system. We learn that by our synapses in our brain. So each native input from the language fires a group of neurons, and more often they are fired, more often they become stronger, and they become more present at the brain. So when we receive a second language input, what may happen is a interphonology, which is something that the two systems, they start to interfere with each other because of the neurostructure of the brain. So the type of phenomena that we are studying it's the Brazilian Portuguese and English transfer phenomena that happens. Brazilian Portuguese being the native language as L1, and English being the foreign language as L2. So The motivation for our work, it's that we want to provide an intelligent software designed to help language learners by providing automatic identification of transfer phenomena between Brazilian Portuguese and English that is produced during the reading process of a native speaker of Brazilian Portuguese. So we want to provide an automated way of identifying these processes. And the applications we're searching for, it's applications in proficiency placement tests, like when a new student goes to a new language school, there's a proficiency placement test, because we know there's a correlation between the occurrences of transfer phenomena and the proficiency. And we want also to apply this in distance education, like people that live in very remote places, or times like this in the pandemic when people have to social distancing. We also like to produce something in the computer assisted pronunciation training, which the newest research, they have been showing positive effects of using this type of computer assistants, especially for neurodiverse people, as we know, as like people with autism and people with ADHD. And we also like to apply that on research purposes, like for a rapid identification for linguists, for example. And our objectives are actually is to propose a seed for an intelligent software. We do not have the power or the knowledge to do it already, but we propose a seed for this automatic identification using a radio basis function artificial neural network. And our hypothesis is that even the simple architectures of artificial neural network, RBF for short, radio basis function, is a simple architecture, but we believe that it is already pretty good to be able to give this to people to automatically identify transfer phenomena. So our data collection, we do not went for the traditional way of doing this, because the traditional way will be record real people, but we didn't do that. We synthetically generated this transfer phenomena using the Google Translate TTS system, the text-to-speech system, which is a system that uses a neural network to be able to produce speech. So what happens is that because of the neural structure of the systems also produce transfer phenomena, because the neural structure is vulnerable to this kind of behavior. So the way to do that is the platform has several language options. So we can select, for example, the Portuguese option here. And if we type a English word, what will happen is that the system will try to produce an English word using an artificial neural network trained for Portuguese. So it's similar to what happens in the brain of students, of unexperienced students, I may say. So when we hit the button, it will produce a transfer phenomena. So we recorded that, and the selected process that we chose were the deletion of initial age in words beginning with H, like in words like humorist. When students tend to produce humorist, they erase they delete the initial H of the word. The second was the deletion of initial H with the change of A to E in words beginning with HY, like in hydrant, the students tend to produce hydrant. Changing A to E while keeping the pronunciation of initial H in words beginning with HY, like in words like hydrant, the same word, but now they produce hydrant. So they keep the H, but they produce hydrant. And producing of silent K with the insertion of apathetic I in words beginning with KN, like knife, they tend to produce knife. And the voicing of S when S appears between two vowels, like in case, students tend to produce case. They make a sound. Data collection. So this is the distribution, the how many words we collected from this in this approach. So to be able to work with this kind of algorithms and approach, we need a huge amount of data. So we selected 508 words, English words, to work from several different categories. And because it's a study, it's a continuation of a study, we already have the results of occurrence of transfer phenomena on the platform. All transfer processes were observed in Google Translate, so we were able to acquire data from all processes. So we extracted acoustic cues from those recordings. We use Praat, the automatic scripts from Praat to be able to do that. And we selected only the specific region of the phenomenon. So I forgot to put, but this word is humor. So this is the phenomenon word, and this is the native word produced by Google Translate. So we already can visually see the difference, that there is a difference. So we extracted the mean of the first two formal frequencies, F1 and F2, and the mean of the fundamental frequency to be able to show to the network the differences, the mathematical differences between these two signals, because artificial neural networks work, they only can see signals and math and descriptors, signal descriptors. So the type of network that we use was artificial neural network, and the type of radio basis function, which it basically is work as so it chooses centers to characterize each category. So it compares every input to these centers and tries to predict which category that word belongs to, like if it's a phenomenon or if it's a native sample. We'll collect samples, we'll look at the mathematical representation of those samples, and we compare with words that are part of the training process. And what will happen is it will try to predict if it's a phenomenon or if it's a native word, a native pronunciation. So the type of architecture, some details that we used 3 input neurons, F1, F2, and F0, mean F0. So the number of hidden neurons is variable. The centroid definition was made through k-means algorithm. The number of output neurons is variable. Sometimes it can depend on the number of classes that you are working with. The number of simultaneous transfer processes that I'm trying to classify simultaneously. So the training algorithm was ordinary least squares, and the stopping condition was a low mean square error threshold. This is some technical details about the network. So this is an overview of what we did. So we had Google Translate producing audio recording. So we recorded that the raw speech of that Google Translate produced. We cut the region of the specific of the phenomenon. We extracted the acoustic cues from this audio samples, and we separated in a training database and a test database. So the training database was presented to the algorithm, and the neural network learned how to classify those words. And then we tested the model using samples that they never seen. The neural network never seen those samples. So basically the same way we test a student, like we show them questions that they never seen. So the model tries to predict if it's a phenomenon or if it's a native-like sample. So the results that we had, I want to show you the type of data the type of F1 and F2 that we got. So this is basically shows a distribution separated by classes, like there's English and there's Brazilian Portuguese that didn't produce phenomenon, and Brazilian Portuguese with the phenomenons. So to be able to show that there is a difference, and these values might actually look weird for what I see. They might seem weird for projections, but this was on purpose because we wish to show to the neural network the differences. So we had to seek for extreme values, and not always we coded the phenomenon directly on the vowel. Sometimes we had to extend the region that we coded the phenomenon to be able to show that to the neural network. We kind of took advantage of how Foreman frequencies work to be able to show to the neural network what's the difference. And this is also the mean F0 distribution. So you can see there is a difference between the samples. So this is the result we got with the neural network. It was able to actually, this is the accuracy. So for H deletion, 92% accuracy, for HYE, 94%, the KN kin 94%, and 93% for SZ. So we found that there are pretty good results, pretty high levels of accuracy, considering the size of the data set we had. So our conclusions is that our hypothesis is actually confirmed, because even a radio basis function artificial neural network was able to identify the transfer process. So we see that as a confirm of a hypothesis. And the future work that we intend to do is to search for new methods that we want to try to predict if it's a phenomenon or not, even when the audio sample it's unprocessed. So we don't want to cut anything. So we want to look at the entire word and be able to tell if in that word there is a phenomenon. We want to expand the study phenomenon. We wanted to go look at other phenomena. We want a compact and efficient version for mobile devices to be able to put that in cell phones, in computers that do not need very high processing power. And we also want a human-friendly interface for all types of applications, like the applications that I told you about, distance learning, applications for neurodiverse people, and this kind of applications. This is my references, some of them, and thank you very much. And any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was good, especially for, so you are an engineer, I'm an engineer as well, so do not worry. We have a few engineers here. And those who work, the linguists and the phonologists here, they will at least have an idea of how, for example, the Google Translate can be used to study some things. If I understood correctly, the phenomenon that you studied is the use of the rules in L1 language to transform orthography to phonetic sounds. And yes. When you use the rules of L1 in L2, you have the phenomenon that you observed.
Yes.
That's it, right?
Yes, so that's it. So there's a neural network that is responsible for understanding what we write as text and to be able to transform that in speech. So if you use a Portuguese trained neural network, it will, and if we write an English word, we will produce a phenomenon.
One suggestion that I would give you, and that's an interest, one good point is that you showed the F1, F2 distributions for all the measured sounds, right? So you use the neural network, it's okay, it's not a problem. Only one suggestion, you could have used a much simpler classification technique, like linear discriminant analysis, for example, LDA, using the Fisher discriminant, which is much simpler than a neural network. What I'm telling is that if you have a simpler method that gives you the same results, then you should use a simpler method. It's the Occam-Razor paradigm. But it's just a suggestion because maybe the neural network will give you better results. If the neural network gives you better results, it's okay to use them. But if you have a simpler technique that can give you the same results, and I would dare to say that by looking at the F1, F2 graphics that you showed, I would say that it's not so hard to classify the data using a simpler technique. So please show this one. But that's just an idea because I'm not sure if it would give you better results or not. We are now at the end of the day, but let me see if we have questions from the audience. Thank you very much. I've got the question. So Adelaide, please.
Thank you, Henny. Thank you also, Atos, for your talk. It was very, very interesting. As a linguist that goes sometimes towards natural language processing, I would like to know, well, we are worried about how we can build hypotheses, or how can we use artificial intelligence, for example, to help us knowing or discovering the hypotheses humans do when dealing with languages. So in that sense, I would like you to explain a little bit more about the architecture of the neural network, in the sense that you told us you have a variable number of hidden layers. Okay, but variable, how do they vary from 2 to 50? How's that? And also, I would like to know, how do you deal with the weights joining?
So please, okay. So let him answer first. It's the number of hidden neurons that change.
Okay,
then
okay.
Go to the second part. So it's variable, but how many?
Yeah.
Variable from how many to how many?
Okay, so the number of, in this type of architecture, in the of RBF, ANN, the hidden neurons are actually the centroids of the classes. So it depends on how many classes you were dealing with at the time. So, for example, if I'm dealing with two phenomena simultaneously, so I have to classify if it's a native pronunciation, if it's a phenomenon A or phenomenon B. Usually, what we use on the neural network is 3 neurons on the hidden layer. So each neuron will represent the center of that class. So the neural networks compare the inputs to the centers of each class, and the nearest center, it's actually the center that wins the dispute. Something like that. It's not as direct as that, but it's something like that. It has a more non-linearity in the middle of it, but it's something like that. So it may vary depending on how many phenomena you were dealing with simultaneously. So, but sometimes the process of determining the number of hidden neurons is very, how can I say, it's very try and try. It's very interactive. It's very, you have to try it and see if you get a good result. If you don't, you have to try another number. And if you don't, we have to try another number, because not always it will be exactly the same number of classes. For example, on my result, I put the number of of hidden neurons. The number of centroids represents the number of hidden neurons. So for some processes it was 6, for some process 2 was enough. For most processes 2 was enough, but H deletion required 6. So it is a try and error.
And Adelaide, the second part of your question, I was going to ask about this, but I didn't hear. Adelaide, the second part of the question.
Okay, I was wondering, how do you calibrate the weights of the synapses that join the neurons? So, and how do you establish the number of classes you are dealing with? Because this is important for us to understand the hypothesis humans do when trying to learn a foreign language, for example.
So the synapses, the weights of the synapses, in this case, I use the ordinary least squares algorithm, which is a linear algorithm, a kind of linear algorithm that uses the hidden weights are random and the output weights are actually calculated by the ordinary least squares algorithm. So it's a mathematical algorithm that we use, and so it basically does a linear regression, a kind of linear regression on the weights, and it's called ordinary least squares. So it's a very fast way of doing that, but it's not the only way. Sometimes people like to use backpropagation, so they do it as a interactive process. So they show an example. The neural networks try to predict what it is, and if it gets wrong, it will change the weights according with the difference between the output and the input. So if it's very wrong, it will correct the weights a lot, and if it's a little bit wrong, it will try to not change the weights very much. So this is another approach. So there are several different approaches for training and adjusting the weights, the hidden weights and the output weights.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So we are now 13 minutes behind the schedule, but I think it's a good idea if we finish today's session and we can continue tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
I guess Adriana has something to say.
Sorry?
Yes, Adriano.
Well, I'd like question.
Okay. Please go. Sorry, I didn't see. Adriano, please ask your question.
I would like to go back to figure number 7. I have 2 questions about it.
Number 7.
Yeah.
Which it is? Number 7? I don't think I have a 7.
You don't have figure number 7? The one where we're like cutting the, it's the pipeline, this one.
Here?
Yeah.
Oh, it's wrong. It's a wrong number.
Okay, anyway. First question is, what's the reason for using, like the Google synthesizer instead of like real speech?
So the main reason of that is because it's actually very hard to record real people because of the nature of the models that we use. They're artificial models. They need a huge amount of data. So we need several students from several different levels of English. And I remember that the last time this was done there was more than 2,000 samples to do one study. So it is actually very, very hard to collect the data from human people, especially now on the pandemic, because now in the pandemic, social distancing, and it became very hard to record real people. And we use Google Translate because we see that was a fairly easy approach to acquire those samples. So it was actually a plan to evolve that to real people, to gather real. but unfortunately we were not able, both to resources and to the pandemic.
That's not the answer I expected. I expected to say that using the Google Translate, you have really the standard of phonetic, photography to phonetic translation or groups that you could have. That would be a good answer, because if you say that you need many people, Google Translate is only one subject, right?
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to get at. Like, suppose that you had all these samples from human speech, right? I mean, somebody gave that to you. So what difference would you expect to see in your in your results?
In the results, we expected to see not much difference, because Google Translate is actually very good at simulating this transfer phenomenon. So we do not see many differences from what Google Translate does and what real people do. Maybe will actually be a little bit harder because in real data there's always noise. So noise is always a problem for signal processing. So we think that it's a little bit harder, but not because of the samples itself, but because of the noise that will come with the samples.
I was thinking more, wouldn't you expect to see way more variability? This is as if you were having just one speaker, always the same speaker, right? So if you were using like different people, like lots of people, there would be way more variability in your system. So I would expect the results to change. I don't know by how much, but wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, we have a small data set of real people, so it is very small. So we cannot train a model with it because it's not sufficient to be able to train a model. But when we plotted the F1 and F2 frequencies and the F0, we see more variability, but the samples were very, there was not much difference between Google Translate and real people. Real people are, yes, they are more spread, there's more variance in the data, but they were not so far, they were close.
Okay, Eugenio, want to kick me out, or you're just trying to?
Okay, go ahead.
Now, one last question I have, like you said, when you go from the waveform to the spectrogram, and then you extract some features, right, in order to feed them into your neural network, right?
Right.
And you said that you have to do that because neural networks, they can only take as input some parameters, right?
Right.
So one common approach these days, that's what like the Google synthesizers do, like WaveNet, these guys, what they actually do, they take the waveform in the time domain, they compute the spectrogram and use those as like input images to convolutional neural networks. Are you aware of anything like that? Or?
Yeah, I'm aware of this type of identification of speech processing strategy. But the problem with that, it is very resource consuming. So it needs huge processing power to be able to perform something like that. So it's something that is very, very expensive to train a model with that, because it might not be expensive, but will take a very long time to be able to train a model this way. So what we do is actually try to seek for the simplest approaches, the simplest product that we can build. So this type of neural network doesn't require that much processing power, so I can run it on my computer or in some websites that do that. But to be able to train those type of sophisticated models, it would be very resource consuming.
Okay, well, yeah. What people usually do, they use like GPUs these days. So depending on your database, it's not that bad. But anyway, it's true that like what I'm suggesting is going towards the opposite direction of what Henny said. He wants to try the simplest thing. I'm just saying it's becoming very common, this approach where you treat, you have like a time signal, you go to the frequency domain. Now we have a spectrogram, and then you treat that as an image. It's kind of your input is an image, right? So it's as if you're not dealing with speech anymore. You're dealing with like something visual. But anyway, that's very common these days. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah. You're welcome. So any further questions, you can go to my email. You can email, so I'm happy to answer at the end. Here's my email.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Adriano, and thank you, Atos. One thing that I was going to say that time, Adriano, is that the advantage of using the Google Translate is that you know that it will use the rules that we use from Portuguese to read some English words. If you take a subject, everybody is contaminated by English today. So even a person who does not speak, depending on the word that the person sees, he will probably know something about English, and we don't know what this person knows. And Atos, one thing for you, to have a subject to record 500 words is easy, very, very easy. And noise is not a problem. You can have a very clean recording using a smartphone today. And so this is not a reason anymore for not acquiring your own data. Okay?
Henny.
Yes.
I'm afraid we only have the room until 5 p.m. So
we are finishing now, and we
okay. Just because we may disconnect at any time now. I don't know if the room vanishes or something.
Don't worry, we have 2 minutes. So
they're gonna kick us out.
Okay. So thank you very much for everybody. We see each other tomorrow. I recommend everybody to arrive a few minutes before 1 o'clock. And then we have our second day of the meeting. I enjoyed very much today, and I expect to see everybody tomorrow. So have a good afternoon or good evening, depending on the person. So so bye.
See you.
See you tomorrow.
See you. Bye, everybody.
See you.
Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
I'll wait.